Meeting of the City of Port Phillip Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of this land, the people of the Kulin Nations. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. Welcome to all of our councillors who are here this evening. We've got Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff and Councillor Copsey from Lake Ward, Councillor Consolo and Councillor Martin, including myself from Gateway Ward, Councillor Crawford, Deputy Mayor Baxter and Councillor Clark from Canal Ward. So welcome to everybody, welcome to all councillors this evening. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid style this evening, both in person and online. And it's being streamed live on Council's webcast page and our Facebook page. The streams and the recordings of the Council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered or reproduced or republished without the written permission of Council. If we experience any technical difficulties, we may take a short break if required to resolve any issues that come up. I remind attendees that are here attending in person and also online and wish to speak to address Council, please extend courtesy and respect to Council and our officers in particular and abide by the processes of which we operate here at Council. Please take direction from me as Chair when called on to do so, and speakers, please be respectful and and make sure that any statements that you make or questions are not defamatory or offensive in nature, and please, nothing aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of Council staff. Please also make sure that any questions or comments are within the realm and powers of Council. Councillors, let's move now to item 1 and get things rolling. It's apologies. There's no apologies because you're all in attendance, so let's move to item number 2, and that is the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, the minutes of the meeting of Council on the 4th of May 2022 have been circulated. Do you have any questions of officers of these minutes? If not, I'll ask for someone to move. Councillor Bond to move and Councillor Consolo the second. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item number 3 is declaration of conflicts of interest. Councillor Clark has indicated she has a conflict of interest. Councillor Clark? If you could just hit your microphone, Councillor Clark.
Yes, I have a conflict of interest due to my work commitments for one of the confidential items. Thank you.
No problem. That's in relation to confidential item 17.1, which is the interim curbside waste collection and recycling process arrangements. And if you get you to read, do that when we get to that item in confidential, that'd be fantastic. Councillors, any other conflicts of interest that wish to be disclosed? Thank you. I'll now suspend for a quick moment and pause for a presentation of award. The presentation of awards has been added to tonight's agenda. The City of Port Phillip's Waste Team has received 2 Keep Victoria Beautiful Sustainable Cities Award, one in 2020 in the category of waste and one also in 2021 in the category of litter. I asked Lachlan Johnson, our Executive Manager of Construction, Contracts and Operations, to say a few words. Lachlan, welcome. Congratulations, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor. In 2020, Council's Waste Team launched the glass recycling trial to test the viability of curbside and communal glass recycling options across the municipality. The trial ran for 8 months, collected more than 300,000 litres of glass, and confirmed that communal recycling as the community's preferred recycling option. The project also introduced flip-top auditing to the City of Port Phillip, which continued through the food organics and garden organics and communal food organics trials. In November 2020, the project won the 2020 Keep Victoria Beautiful Sustainable Cities Award for the category of waste. In 2021, Council Service Transformation Team launched the Ops System Initiative, a project designed to digitise our operational fleet, integrate with Council's One Council system and provide end-to-end visibility across the waste and street and beach services for the first time at Council. The project involved the installation of cameras and GPS units across the operational fleet of Council and the uptake of more than 120 users, ranging from drivers and labourers through to office workers and management staff. In December last year, the ops system took home the 2021 Keep Victoria Beautiful Sustainable Cities Award in the category of litter.
We resume the meeting at item number 4, public question time and submissions. I call upon Amanda Ross submitting a question to Council. Amanda, do you hear us online?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, and please state your question.
My name's Amanda Ross. Sorry?
That's all right. Go ahead.
My name's Amanda Ross, and my family and I are current residents of Middle Park.
Fine.
My husband Brad is disabled. I'm sorry, I can't speak with people talking over me. My husband Brad is disabled and uses a mobility scooter or a wheelchair. I provided the council some photos by email today, which I suggest you reference to enhance your understanding of this issue. We're moving to 146 Neville Street, Middle Park, near McGregor Street in mid-June. We realised that the footpath from McGregor along Neville is only about 75 centimetres wide, which isn't wide enough for a wheelchair. Then from 144 Neville, it widens substantially. In March, I lodged a request with both Assist and Mark Thompson, requesting a ramp be installed at the point the footpath widens at the pedestrian laneway running parallel to McGregor Street. Over a month after that request, and only after chasing, Mr Thompson advised that a DDA-compliant ramp cannot be installed at that location due to infrastructure. As far as I can tell, that's a storm drain nearby. He also said installation might not be achieved until FY24. He later advised that he'd be prepared to make adjustments to the cobbled lane between 154 and 156 Neville Street to make it DDA compliant. That isn't very helpful because that's 5 houses away from our property, and Brad would not be able to access that lane on Wednesday evening and Thursdays as 9 or 10 wheelie bins block the way, leaving at best a parking space of about a metre. The existing crossover at the corner of Neville and McGregor is also close to a stormwater drain. The edge of the drain to the start of the crossover is about 145 centimetres. The distance from the edge of the stormwater drain to the location where we suggested a new crossover be installed is greater than that. I'm therefore unclear why some kind of access can't be installed at that location. Brad also suggested a speed hump kind of arrangement similar to that at across Langridge Street near Park Street be installed. That's just over 180 centimetres along the flat top and has a height of about 15 centimetres, which is about the depth of the gutter at Neville Street. Mr Thompson agreed to look into that as a possible solution, but I've not heard from him since the 4th of May, even though I've explained the urgency of this request. In relation to Mr Thompson's reference to a DDA-compliant ramp, the Australian Human Rights Commission states on their website that there is no mandatory minimum technical compliance standard under the DDA that can be referred to in relation to footpaths. There is therefore no such thing as a DDA-compliant footpath or cross-ramp. To suggest that accessible footpaths cannot be provided or will take years to provide because of the requirements of the Disability Discrimination Act is in itself disability discrimination of a particularly insidious kind, and we strongly object to that terminology. I've also raised concerns about the pedestrian crossing over Canterbury Road at Middle Park Station being a wheelchair trap on several occasions since October 2016. That matter was referred to Mark Thompson in March 2021. I still have no date on when that crossing will be made wheelchair safe, and that's a wait going on nearly 6 years. I'm sure you can therefore appreciate my anxiety about Mr Thompson facilitating an accessible footpath to our home next month. My question to Council is therefore, would Council please prioritise accessibility to this part of Neville Street so my husband can access his own home when we move there next month?
Thank you, Amanda, for the question, and thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us this evening. Lachlan Johnson, can you help us with those questions, please?
I can. Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Amanda, for raising these concerns here at Council tonight. I've had discussions with Mr Thompson about the history of the lad here, and I can appreciate that this has been a difficult process to go through. I know that Mark has been working with you to try and resolve this and that we haven't been able to reach a solution, but hopefully we've got some interim arrangements that can make the property accessible in the short term. Council takes very seriously its obligations to ensure that the city is a welcoming, accessible place for all members of the community. Council's Capital Works program includes extensive funding allocated to upgrading pram ramps and other infrastructure to make sure that it is accessible. I'm able to confirm tonight that Council has been able to allocate some funding from that Capital Works program to provide an accessible ramp in Neville Street, and that those works will be completed within the next few weeks. Unfortunately, as you've outlined, due to the very tight nature in the street, existing car parking and underground utilities, including telecommunications infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, as you outlined, and some other property connections, it's not possible to install a ramp directly outside of the property in question without significant civil works. That's not to say it can't be undertaken, but it can't be undertaken before June. This process would likely take a protracted period of time, given that we need to arrange for services to be relocated. As Mark and officers have outlined, the most suitable location in the short term is the threshold of the laneway, which is located approximately 5 dwellings down from the property that you've identified. Given the urgency associated with providing access, I can confirm that subject to favourable weather conditions next week, the threshold will be lowered at the laneway entrance, so an accessible ramp will be available there. I note that you've raised concerns previously and you've also raised them tonight as well, that the location is often utilised by residents to place their bins out for collection in what is a very constrained area of Neville Street. Officers will write to all residents located and request them to leave their bins in other areas along the street for collection so that all members of community may access that ramp at the laneway threshold. There have been some other issues raised tonight about the crossing at Canterbury Road, which I'm happy to take up and follow up with Amanda Ross separately after the meeting.
Thank you, Lachlan Johnson. I call upon Alex Darton to submit a question to Council. Alex, welcome back. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, and I'll ask your question to be within 3 minutes, obviously. Thank you.
Name is Alex Darton, I live in Elwood. So my question tonight is, would the council be willing to help facilitate a local residents who are prepared to plant, water and maintain trees that are missing from our streets? Now, that's the question, and the trees I'm talking about is particularly in Elwood, but elsewhere as well. As you walk down the streets, there's, the ones without nature strips, they'll have squares cut out and trees growing, and a bunch of them are missing. So it's sort of about them. It's about, there should be trees there. We don't have trees there. That coupled with trees that I've seen that are dying, well, they look like they're dying when they're young, they look like they're not maintained or they're not planted properly or something. So there's not enough trees growing, and trees take a while to grow, and we need these trees grown. And you guys have the greening and canopy plan and whatnot. But it's more, can people get involved with you guys, work with you, and do basically a chunk of it? Because I feel like there's a groundswell there. There's a lot of people, particularly renters, which we have a lot of, that want to be out there doing stuff. And this would be mutually beneficial, where we would all get trees and it wouldn't cost too much. And the people were willing to, get their hands dirty, so to speak. So that's the question, yeah.
Thanks for the question, Alex. Tony Keenan, can you help us out with the answer, please?
Through you, Mayor, I think Dana Pritchard is online and is going to answer that question.
Thanks, Tony. Dana, can you hear us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I can hear everyone. So thank you for that. Council actually plants all the trees within the municipality and the streets to ensure the suitability of species that are selected, the quality of stock, and also to undertake best planting practice techniques. For these reasons, it's not appropriate for residents to plant and carry out maintenance on street trees themselves. However, residents can request trees to be planted via the SnapSend Solve app or by contacting council directly. We definitely support residents also watering trees that are in their street to help establish them. And there's a number of park planting programs that we undertake as well. So hopefully the residents in Elwood and elsewhere, if they are looking for additional trees to be planted, if they contact us at council, we can assist there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I call upon Jack Halliday submitting a question to council. Jack, can you hear us online?
Hello, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Loud and clear. Thanks, Jack. Just state your name and your suburb and please fire away.
It's Jack Halliday from Balaclava. Mr. Mayor, councillors and officers, I understand the table I prepared from the draft budget showing expenditure for 2024-25 has been provided to you. It shows the level of disadvantage. They're looking for you. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. We're all good.
Yeah, well, okay. It shows the level of disadvantage affecting residents of St Kilda, East Balaclava compared to residents in other neighbourhoods in terms of the number of open spaces, the area of open space per head, population per square kilometre and expenditure per head on open space. At $248 over this 3-year period, less than 20% of Port Melbourne, for example, and just over a third of Albert Park, Middle Park, as shown in the table. Council at its meeting of December the 8th recognised that provision of additional open space in St Kilda, East Balaclava was a priority, especially considering the very high level of apartment living in this area. In Volume 1 of the Public Space Strategy, Council states its criteria in determining open space provisions, the most important of which is equity, stated as follows. Access to public space is important to the health and well-being of our community. Wherever possible, we prioritise equitable provision in our investment in public spaces across our municipality, now and into the future. However, the strategy clearly shows that the earliest acquisition of additional open space council contemplates is within the period between 2026 to 2032. My question is, why is council delaying the provision of additional open space in St Kilda, East Balaclava, given its commitment to equity across the municipality? Thank you.
No, thank you, Jack. Tony Keenan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Mr. Halliday is correct that the People and Public Places strategy, which was endorsed by Council in December last year, does say that the acquisition of additional open space will occur not, as Mr. Halliday said, from 2026 to 2029, and that was assessed as in the medium term. If Mr. Halliday, and that was endorsed by Council, so any budget's been prepared by officers in relation to that strategy. If Mr. Halliday wants to submit via the budget and Council plan process, that Council considers bringing that forward, he's able to do that.
Thank you, Tony Keenan. I call upon Justin Halliday submitting a question to council. Justin, welcome. Just get you to state your name. I was about to call upon you virtually. No. Good to have you here.
You got the real thing tonight.
No, welcome. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, Justin. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor. Justin Halliday, St Kilda East. Follow up on the previous question about the council budget and the public space strategy. As we have just heard, on December 8, Council directed officers to prioritise poorly serviced areas of St Kilda East, Balaclava and South Melbourne in implementing the public space strategy. Council also directed officers to expand existing public spaces and explore opportunities to acquire land, to close roads and to deliver permanent new public space. Additionally, at the same council meeting on the 8th of December, Officer Chris Carroll committed council officers to move ahead quickly with our strategy around acquisition and discontinuance, and that they were looking to get started on this around March of this year, which is several months ago. He also stated we will be looking at opportunities now that we have clear direction about where to buy and the scope of funding we have available. He said also, and I quote, "We won't be delaying that." However, as we've seen in the new council budget draft, in the next 4 years we have proposals for only 4 temporary public spaces, not even permanent public spaces, over the next 4 years in St Kilda East and Balaclava, and it moves the first land acquisition from in this 4-year period into the next 4-year period as well. This is at odds with the direction from Council to prioritise addressing lack of public access in public space in St Kilda, lack of access to public space in St Kilda, Balaclava and South Melbourne. My question to Council officers is why is there no funding in the budget to expand existing public space and for land acquisition as committed to on 8th of December and as directed on 8th of December? And why has the first acquisition been not moved forward but delayed until 2026?
Thank you. Tony Keenan.
Through you, Mayor, I don't think there was any direction from Council. The direction was in the adoption of the strategy on December the 8th, and in that strategy it has land acquisition in East St Kilda East occurring in the medium term between 26 to 29, and so that's the basis on which officers have prepared the budget on the basis of the strategy that was endorsed on the 8th of December last year. Again, through the budget process, residents are able to submit to Council different budget priorities, but officers have prepared the budget on the basis of the strategy that was adopted. And if you go onto the website, you'll see in volume 3 at page 16 that land acquisition in East St Kilda East is set there for the medium term from 2026 to 2029. So officers would not have any authority to prepare a different budget than that, given that's a council strategy.
Mr. Carroll, Chris Carroll, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. What I can say is that we are continuing to work and to look at opportunities. We have investigated several sites that have come up recently. We haven't decided to go ahead with them. What we haven't been able to do yet because of resourcing constraints, we've had some vacancies in what is a very small team and also a fairly loaded agenda, is start our work on a more planned approach. At the moment we are a little bit reactive. Having said that, in terms of where the budget outlines at the moment, we will do the work if there's opportunities that come up, and if at the end of that work we think we can implement acquisition sooner, we will recommend that to Council. There is a lot to go through, particularly if we're looking at doing some street closures and things like that in terms of preparing for those, consultation, the process itself. But we're not looking to overall purposefully delay. There have been some delays in our planning because of resource constraints, but we will continue to move ahead, and I am committed to continuing to look at opportunities in St Kilda East and Balaclava and pursuing them with Council in the shorter to the medium term.
Thank you, Chris Carroll. Councillor Crawford, would you like to ask a question or say something? Go ahead.
Can I just clarify, please? We are doing, though, in the next year's budget, starting to do the work of looking where the ideal places to acquire property is. So we haven't even done that planning work of where we get best bang for our buck in terms of where it's located. So we actually have to do the strategic work, and that's happening next year, isn't it?
Chris Carroll.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, that's happening through our business as usual activities. And as I said, we had hoped to commence some of that work in March. We've been a bit more reactive, but we have been doing some work. But it will start in more fulsome capacity in July, August next year, or financial year.
Councillor Crawford.
And one more follow-up question. In the process of putting compulsory acquiring land, if that's what we need to do, not just buying property, that takes years too. So if we identified something, we could start that process, but the reality is it's a very long process to get there anyway. So I think the timeline of 2026 allows for us to identify and start that process. And obviously, I mean, if there are, is that not correct?
Go ahead, Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor, that is correct. But if in our planning activities we identify opportunities and things to do more quickly, we'll bring that to Council, and Council can decide then if they want to bring some of that forward.
Thank you all. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. The next series of questions in relation to item 13.1, Childcare Centre Portfolio Improvement, consultation on proposal to sell 3 properties, reporting to submissions. I've received a request from the 3 presidents of those centres requesting additional time to speak. Given they're speaking for and on behalf of the centres, I've allowed that. So I'm going to give them each one of the presidents additional time. In lieu of the number of speakers we have this evening, I'm going to restrict the amount of time thereafter to 2 minutes. I'll allow a couple of representatives that have also submitted beforehand to speak for a little longer if they wish. But I've allowed a significant amount of additional time for the three presidents. As we go through it, I would ask speakers to obviously be succinct in their comments, but also if things are starting to be repeated or reiterated, please feel free to reiterate that's already been said. But if you could obviously try your best to refrain from repeating the same thing, obviously. With that in mind, I call upon Claire Byrne, President of Elwood Children's Centre, speaking to item 13.1. Claire, welcome. And if I just get you to state your name and your suburb, and go ahead.
Claire Byrne, St Kilda West. I'm the current chair of the Committee of Management at Elwood Children's Centre. As you would likely know by now, Elwood Children's Centre, to which we all refer as ECC, has been in operation for nearly 40 years. We are a community-run centre, meaning that the day-to-day management of the centre is provided to the community free of charge by a parent committee. The centre provides 39 licensed places per day, including 25 kindergarten places. This equates to care and education for the children of around 50 local families each year. We employ 18 staff, all women, and almost half of whom reside in the city of Port Phillip. Our service is rated as exceeding the national quality standards for care and education. We have been doing all of this for some of the lowest daily rates in the area, and we do this whilst remaining a financially viable service, posting a small profit which is reinvested into the centre. We understand from council officers that the building in which ECC operates at 46 Tennyson Street, Elwood, was originally bought in 1985 by the then City of St Kilda for a total of $173,000. A grant for $175,000 was then provided to the City of St Kilda by the state government to refurbish the house into an early childhood centre. We understand that a standard term in such grant contracts would have been some restriction on the sale of the building or to any change in the use of the building. Council officers have claimed that there were no conditions attached to this particular grant. However, they haven't been able to locate a copy of the grant documents to confirm their assumptions. Last December, the ECC community was still in survival mode due to the global pandemic, when we were blindsided by agenda papers from council officers recommending to councillors that they move to an intention to sell the building in which we operate. This proposal included the closure of our long-standing community service by the end of 2023. We had not been consulted on the intention to sell prior to the agenda papers being made public. The proposal claimed that the building did not meet code and disability access requirements, that the building was at the end of its usable life and incurably obsolete, that the site would not be eligible for state government funding, making rebuilding or renewal cost prohibitive to council, and that there was an oversupply of early childhood places in the area, so the loss of places due to the closure of our service would be of little consequence to the community. In regards to the claim that the building is not up to code or DDA compliant at present, on that we are in agreement. There is work to be done. In regards to the claim that the building is at the end of its usable life and incurably obsolete, well, since December last year, our building has been subject to numerous inspections from a variety of auditors. The building condition report found that the building and facade to be in good condition. The roof condition report concluded it was in generally fair condition, but some obvious maintenance needed to fix misaligned tiles, flashing, renew the internal insulation, etc. The OH&S risk report essentially identified no issues. The hazardous materials report found no asbestos evident. In addition, we have spent months repeatedly requesting the evidence which was used in December to conclude that this building is at the end of its usable life and incurably obsolete. Councillors will see from my recent emails that I am in fact still following up on those requests, with my last email on the 9th of May still yet to be responded to either. So despite 6 months of requests, we have yet to be provided with any evidence to support the conclusions that this building is incurably obsolete. What we have found out is that there is no asset management plan for our building at all. The asset register for this building does not meet any of the best practice guidelines for asset management and do not have any relation to the maintenance costs for the building. As such, it seems there is no evidence to suggest that our building has been appropriately managed, nor any evidence for the conclusion that it is now incurably obsolete. And now there is a document in your agenda papers tonight that states that renovation or rehabilitation of our building is considered viable by council officers. So it would seem that there is in fact a cure for our building and this situation. You just have to vote for it. In regards to the claim that there is insufficient funding, well, we note that there was no discussion with ECC to canvass any potential for co-funding of works involved prior to moving to the intention to sell. You didn't even ask us what might be possible. We also note that ECC pays levies to the City of Port Phillip for the management of the infrastructure and maintenance of our building. The amount we pay in these levies has been shown by recent council reports to be comparable to market rent. After months of requesting our maintenance cost figures, we were finally shown documentation that indicated council has actually profited at least $250,000 from our levies in the last 7 years alone. We further note that the current balance of the quality building levy, that is, the fund from which the management of council childcare infrastructure should be drawn, is sitting at a whopping $6.2 million. And I think by now you are all aware that the claim that our site would be ineligible for state government funding has been shown to be incorrect. There is funding available, and we are pleased to hear that talks between the VSBA and council officers seem to be going well. So it would seem that there is in fact funding for these buildings in this situation. You just have to vote for it. In regards to the claim that there is an oversupply of early childhood places in the City of Port Phillip, well, the Kindergarten Infrastructure Service Plan, KISP, agreed to by Council, would beg to differ. The modelling that plan clearly states that to meet demand for kindergarten in the City of Port Phillip, the places offered by these three centres need to remain. The updated modelling recently commissioned by Council would also beg to differ, indicating that even with our three services included, there will still be a shortfall of places within the next few years. So it would seem that there is in fact a need for the childcare and kindergarten places that ECC provides. You just have to vote for them, keeping them. At numerous times in this consultation process, we've heard that any reinvestment in these centres needs to represent value for money to Council. The only value we have seen calculated by council officers in this process seems to be the cost of completing works or perhaps the land value of our site. No one seems to have calculated the value that our service provides to the community, your community. I have spoken to you at previous council meetings on the intangible value that our centres represent to your community. And by now this evening, you will have seen that our colleagues at the Avenue have gone out and had this value independently costed for you. Considering our services are of a similar scale and type, the authors of the report note that the same logic and calculations would apply to our centre. This report shows that the net economic benefit of closure of the Avenue is actually negative $11.9 million. $11.9 million. And I'm sure I can leave it to you to do the maths yourself to multiply that number by 3 to include the closure of Eildon Road and ECC. In our submission, we highlighted just some of Council's policies and objectives that ECC helps you achieve, including some unique aspects of your Every Child Our Future policy, your Move, Connect, Live strategy, and your reconciliation and sustainable community action plans. As Council now embarks on developing their first gender equality action plan, I hope that you will consider the impact of your decisions about these centres on gender equality in the City of Port Phillip. The Grattan Institute has shown that providing access to affordable and high-quality childcare leads to greater workforce participation by women and a boost in GDP. If you truly want to help fix gender inequality and the gender pay gap, you need to support childcare. If you truly want to keep women in jobs in the City of Port Phillip, you would do well to be reminded that our centre's employees are all women, almost half of whom are residents here too. So it would seem to me that working to keep our centre doing what it does best represents fantastic value for money for Council. You just have to vote for it. Now, all this may sound as if the ECC community and committee are fixated on keeping our centre in the current building, and I assure you we are not. What we do want is to keep the ethos of our centre going for future generations. We have indicated a number of alternative options to closure that we would be willing to work with Council to achieve. I would like to finish this evening by acknowledging that the time since this intention to sell our building and close our service was announced has been hard, very hard, particularly as we were still dealing with the impacts of the pandemic both at the centre and in our professional and personal lives. It's been hard on our staff, worrying about job security and then working twice as hard to fill places as new families were less likely to enrol, hearing that the centre may be closed in another year. It's been hard on our families, worrying if they can find suitable alternative childcare that suits their children, or if they can afford to cut back on work if they can't find those places. It's been hard on our committee, having to add significant time to their pro bono contributions in a political campaign. And whilst we would all like to think we have shielded our children from this worry, I think we all know that children are more perceptive than that. But I am looking forward to councillors now having a greater understanding of our service and our value, to councillors no longer being under the impression that there are no alternative options to the closure of these services, to councillors no longer being under the impression that the centres of our size would not be eligible for state funding, to councillors knowing their officers now have a list of multiple alternate options that they have judged as viable, to having the threat of closure removed by council so we can start working together with council to find the best solution, to getting back to what we do best, providing high quality care and education that has benefits to our whole community. So there is a positive future ahead. You just have to vote for it.
Thanks, Claire. I call upon Caroline Thornton, President of Eildon Road Childcare and Kindergarten. Caroline, just get you to state your name and suburb if you could. Thank you.
Caroline Thornton, St Kilda.
Great.
Thank you, councillors and council officers, for allowing me to speak to this critical local issue. Tonight, I am representing the past, present and future families and staff of Eildon Road Childcare and Kindergarten. I am currently the President and have been involved in the committee since 2018. I'd like to acknowledge a number of our dedicated staff attending in the back, many of whom reside in the City of Port Phillip. Our committee is not and has never been under any false illusions regarding the state of the beautiful 100-year-old converted house we operate out of at 17 Eildon Road, St Kilda. Buildings of that age that have no reasonable amounts of money spent to maintain their structural integrity will always start to fall into a state of disrepair. And that is exactly what is happening to our building. Our committee feels very strongly about this. As a group of ratepayers, we feel angry about this apathetic approach to the management of a council-owned building and asset. As a committee, we are angry about the fact that in the 2022 financial year, we will have paid over $110,000 into a maintenance and capital works fund and seen very little money spent on our building. Council officers have in the past stated these centres don't pay rent, and that's correct. An independent rental assessment conducted earlier this year recommended an annual rental amount of $88,000 per annum for Eildon Road. We are paying City of Port Phillip over $22,000 more per annum in maintenance and works levies than we would be paying if we were to engage in a commercial lease agreement. Yet under a commercial lease agreement, our landlord would be obligated under the Commercial Tenancies Act to maintain and fix some of the structural issues affecting our building over time. In the report tabled at the December 1 Council meeting, Council claimed that each of the three centres have disability access issues and are incurably obsolete. It has since been determined that funding is available to upgrade the centres, and it's been proven the accessibility issues outlined in the report can be addressed. It is ironic that Council immediately focused on the outcome of closing our centres, citing barriers to accessibility. The closure of these three centres create accessibility issues for many of the families who attend them. Eildon Road is the only kindergarten and childcare centre in an area covering almost 4 square kilometres, stretching across 4 suburbs from Middle Park to Elwood on the western side of St Kilda and Brighton Roads. It is the only kindergarten within the St Kilda Park Primary School catchment zone. In Council's December 1 report, a number of our closest alternative centres were listed. The closest like-for-like centre is 1.3 kilometres away, across the other side of the Nepean Highway. In a family survey conducted in January, 70% of our families said they would find commuting to another centre difficult. For many of our families, travelling by public transport is not an option. The majority of the centres suggested by Council are serviced by the older style trams that are difficult to board with a single pram, and a double pram will not fit through the doors or its entry handrails. For the majority of our families, 71% of whom walk to the centre and 10% of whom ride to the centre, this would mean that accessing another centre would mean a car trip. Some of our families don't actually own cars. They chose to live in St Kilda, close to amenities, because it meant that they didn't need a car. This is a lifestyle choice actively encouraged and in line with Council's own sustainable environment strategy. Yet under this proposal, Council will be removing a service that makes such sustainability commitments achievable for residents. Our centre has done some modelling to determine the environmental impact of this additional car usage within our municipality. Assuming only 2/3 of the 44 families who currently walk or ride were required to drop off and collect their children by car, 29 families now would be required to make 2 extra car trips per day. That's an extra 58 car trips each day, or 289 extra car trips each week. This represents an extra 28 tonnes of CO2 being released into the City of Port Phillip each year. And of course, this doesn't even touch on the increased financial burden and impact on families' wellbeing. Additionally, the nearby centres listed by Council were purely a list. They weren't put forward as options for us because those centres cannot possibly absorb the 60 or so children who would be displaced at the end of 2023. Our families may well find themselves travelling to Port Melbourne or South Melbourne to access places within the municipality, or indeed withdrawing from the workforce to care for their children until they find a suitable alternative to Eildon Road. Over time, it will even drive families' decisions about where to live, reducing the demographic diversity and having a long-term impact on the amenity and livability of this pocket of St Kilda. This was a theme regularly touched on by families of all of the 3 centres in their Have Your Say submissions. We chose to live where we live due to its proximity to our childcare centre. Our family survey also revealed that 63% of our families said closing our centre would mean one parent would need to delay their return to work or reduce their work hours due to childcare affordability. Along with Elwood and the Avenue, our centre is one of the most affordable in the municipality. Some of our nearest centres charge $30 per day more. 41% of families said that sending their child to one of those alternative centres would cause financial distress. There is a huge volume of academic and other research demonstrating that the more parents of young children access childcare, the greater the economic and financial benefits to the economy. It equates to higher workforce participation and stronger productivity. There is also significant data demonstrating the link between investment in early childhood services and economic activity. Data from the Grattan Institute is being shared by my colleagues at the other centres tonight. It outlines that for every $1 more a family spends on childcare costs, there is a decrease in formal economic activity of $2.20. Our retail strips of Ackland and Fitzroy Streets are already struggling. Based on this data, for every $1 more spent on childcare, Eildon Road families will have $2.20 less to spend in Ackland and Fitzroy Streets. Local business owners have already expressed that without affordable childcare within access of Fitzroy and Ackland Street, they will find it even more difficult to attract employees in the tightest employment market our economy has seen in many years. Most people in this room would remember the sale of our state schools in the 90s. Relatively soon afterwards, the state government found themselves scrambling for land to build new schools in the inner suburbs as more families chose to raise their children in these areas. The Council's own early education modelling in February this year showed collectively across the forecast areas of St Kilda East and Elwood Ripponlea, the model estimates that in 2027 there may be a shortfall of approximately 35 to 56 kinder places, increasing to a maximum of 126 to 147 kinder places in 2029 when the three-year-old kindergarten program is fully rolled out. This modelling assumed that existing supply remained, including our 3 centres. Once these parcels of land are gone, they are gone forever. Through the Have Your Say process and the 3 centres' own petition, our community has clearly expressed their expectations of the Council. Council needs to abandon the proposal to sell our properties. You need to explore alternative options with an open mind, in partnership with us to ensure solutions properly reflect the needs of our services and community, rather than reflecting incorrect assumptions made prior to any form of consultation. We need you to partner with the centres in discussions with all levels of government in relation to funding options. Given it was us that rallied to ensure that you were aware funding is indeed available, we can add value to these discussions and processes. And we also need you to understand the community's expectations that we continue to have access to community-run childcare services, including small services like our 3 centres. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon Louise Hurd. Thanks, Louise. Just get you to state your name and your suburb.
Louise Hurd, President of the Avenue in Balaclava.
Welcome, thank you.
Good evening, councillors and council officers. Thank you for providing yet another opportunity for me to speak to this important issue. I'm the current President of the Committee of Management for the Avenue Children's Centre and Kindergarten. I've had 2 children go through the centre and my 3rd has recently started. I've been involved in the committee since 2015, and since when my son Luke started there. Along with the dedicated staff, I'm here as the representative of our long-standing committee, of volunteer parents and our parent cohort more generally. I'm also here representing the thousands of children and families that have utilised our important service over the last 40 plus years. As you know, we have on many occasions, both since I've been on the committee and prior to that, attempted to engage with the council in relation to the condition of the building the Avenue currently occupies. These attempts have been consistently rebuffed by council officers. We even offered to pay for the works required, but got 0 engagement on that offer. By the way, that offer still stands. For background, the building the Avenue occupies was acquired by the council in 1975 for $43,000. Shortly after the purchase, the council received a grant from the federal government for $49,201, a net result of over $6,000. This grant was provided to assist with developing the property as a child-minding centre. What we are now dealing with is a proposal that would see the council sell off the building within which our highly valued service operates. This would probably net the council over $3 million, which will purportedly be used to reinvest in children's services. That is certainly a tidy profit for a council which, after taking into account the grant received, paid nothing for the building in the first place. And this is before we even look at the amount the council has taken from our centre over the years in the forms of levies, and compare that to the amount that the council has reluctantly spent on our centre to maintain it. The council coffers have been lined by our not-for-profit centre for decades, and we have seen very little investment by the council in the maintenance of our building. To say this is frustrating would be an understatement. The proposal to sell the 3 early childhood centres buildings was flawed from the beginning. It was commenced under the premise that there were no other viable options. This was based on an interpretation of state government funding, which council officers interpreted, without asking anyone in government any questions, as precluding our centres from eligibility for funding. The council also appeared to decide that it would not be value for money to spend any of the funds our centres have contributed to the Infrastructure Reserve Fund to complete the required works in our centres. Instead, council voted unanimously to commence this process, a process which has now cost $240,000, and that's just the consultation process. And amazingly, this figure doesn't even include the costs of council officers working on this process, nor the costs incurred by our centre's volunteer committees and the staff who have had to divert their resources to fight this flawed process. In commencing this process, Council failed to look at the economic value our service provides. Instead, the focus was on the building condition and the dollar value of our buildings. The concept of value for money has been put forward by numerous officers in our dealings, but at no time has Council sought to place a value on the service we provide to families and the wider Port Phillip community. Despite this gap, in the analysis of the value of our services, there are numerous reputable policy think tanks that have in fact looked at the value of early childhood services, and they've been referred to previously. Yesterday I provided a detailed cost-benefit analysis to councillors, which we would be happy to discuss at any time. This analysis shows that when all factors are taken into account, the net economic benefit of the closure is negative $11.9 million, and that is just for our centre. The proposal put forward on 1 December implied that our families could simply relocate to alternative private centres in the local area. This was based on two assumptions. One, capacity is available. Council's own belated modelling has shown that there will in fact not be enough capacity to service the families impacted by the closure of these three services. And two, that the price rise is able to be absorbed by our families. Private centres in the local area charge between $20 and $40 per day more per child. In a survey of our current families, almost 50% indicated that if fees were to rise by $20 a day, this would become unaffordable for them. If fees were to rise by more than $35 a day, almost 80% of families indicated that their current utilisation of our services, or early childhood services, would be unaffordable and they would have to reduce their utilisation of these services. In the event that this happened, families indicated that one parent would need to either delay their return to work or reduce their working hours. A recent report by the Grattan Institute, which Claire and Caroline have both referred to, noted that for a $5 billion investment in early childhood services, the economic value of such an investment would be $11 billion. To scale this down a bit to our service, this analysis means that for every $1 in higher childcare costs incurred by families, there will be a corresponding decrease in formal economic activity of $2.20. Put in the context of the local economy in Port Phillip, for every $1 higher childcare costs for the Avenue families, it's $2.20 less spending in Carlisle Street. This is a very basic analysis of the costs of closing the centre. It does not take into account the further wasted costs likely to be incurred if the Avenue closes and new capacity has to be built to meet the demand created by our closure. The Avenue offers 10,000 daily places per year. Based on the Grattan analysis, which only looked at the economic outcomes of investment in childcare, the closure of the Avenue will result in an annual economic cost of $660,000 a year. That is $660,000 less that our families will have to spend in your municipality. This is also based on the assumption that childcare centres will magically materialise with capacity to serve the demand that is created by families displaced by this policy. As outlined in our submission to Council, the discussions we have had with councillors, both individually and through the facilitated sessions, there are a number of viable options that Council should have explored prior to commencing this process. These options include a form of gifting of the centres to the community, either to the current committees of management or a new entity which could be set up to oversee all three centres. Alternatively, Council could actually do the works required, funded by a mixture of state and or federal government funding, and putting their hands in their own pockets to use some of the funds we have contributed. Finally, Council could look for an alternative site in the local area to relocate our service. All three options have been found to be viable by Council officers in their analysis. What is now required is for Council to have the guts to reverse its decision, acknowledge that the decision was flawed and other options should have been explored prior to commencing this process, and most importantly, work with the three centres, their management, committees and communities to assess the other options available. We understand that it is hard to admit mistakes were made, and as a committee, we are willing to move forward and let the past mistakes go. We want to work in partnership with the Council and community to find solutions that meet the community's expectations and needs, who are all, by and large, Council ratepayers. Those expectations are that Council will abandon the proposal to sell our properties. They will explore alternative options with an open mind in conjunction with the centres and their communities. They will include the centres in discussions with all levels of government in relation to funding options. They will work with the centres in relation to upgrades we actually require, rather than pie-in-the-sky plans that have no basis in the reality of the services we provide. And I just want to note that as recently as today, I was informed that further plans had been placed on the website, the council website, in relation to possible rejigging of our building. We've never been consulted on what we actually need in a rejigging of our building. So further money has been expended by getting architects or other consultants to draft up plans that have no basis in the reality of what our centre actually requires. We also expect that council will be respectful, transparent and inclusive in their dealings with us, and they will work to ensure the availability of community-run childcare services, including small services like ours, continue to exist, prosper and service the Port Phillip community into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. I call upon Josh Burns. And Josh Burns, sorry, pardon me, I didn't see your question, Councillor Clark. Go ahead.
Yes, can I ask a clarifying question of Louise? I'm just wondering what your centre's view is on gifting of the facility.
We have identified that as one of our preferred options.
I read that, and so that would be something you think would be viable for the ongoing...
Yep.
Okay.
I do.
Thank you.
Was there another question I missed? Thanks, Councillor Clark. Apologies for that. I call upon Josh Burns MP, speaking to item 13.1. Welcome to the council meeting. Josh, I should have recognised you when you walked in. I know it's a busy week for you. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I will keep my remarks very brief. I just wanted to put a few things on the record before the federal election. First of all, to the three centres who made outstanding contributions, well done to all of you. I've seen how hard you've worked and how hard this period has been for you and your centres, and you've led incredibly well, and you should all be proud of the efforts you've made, and I hope that there are better days ahead. I also wanted to thank the four councillors who voted at the previous council meeting, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Deputy Mayor Baxter, Councillor Martin and Councillor Copsey, who all voted to reverse and halt the sale. That was the right call, and I appreciate you all taking that step. My understanding from the state government is that discussions are going well between the VSBA and council, and that there is money on the table from the state government. I also came here tonight to say that as per the letter that was written by the Shadow Minister for Early Childhood Education, Amanda Rishworth, to the Mayor, if we do form government on Sunday, a federal Labor government will sit down straight away with the City of Port Phillip and explore funding options. I know that the City of Port Phillip has a fund there already available. I know that state government has a fund available, and if we are elected government, we will come and talk as well. All council needs to do is reverse its decision and listen to the centres, listen to the community, and listen to the impact that your fantastic three early education services provide to our community. And my wish as the federal member, if we are elected government, is to find a sustainable way to hold these centres and the other centres in community hands so that everyone can benefit from them. Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming again. I call upon Steph Hodgins-May, and Steph, thank you for coming this evening. We greatly appreciate it. I know it's a very busy time for you also. So thanks for carving out some time to join us here this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, and it's a pleasure to be here. I firstly want to acknowledge also the phenomenal work of the employees, the committee members, the parents who have been, I think, dealing with a very tricky set of circumstances and have expended huge emotional labour, have been so incredibly professional throughout this whole process, and to acknowledge the uncertainty that they have been grappling with over recent months. I want to acknowledge the more than 300 submissions that were made, which really demonstrate our deep love and respect and appreciation for the work that these community-run centres do for our community and for our kids. I want to acknowledge that I think this didn't need to happen. We didn't need to be in this position here today. We didn't need to have this angst. If we had have started out with a clear consultation process and respected good communication, we could have avoided significant costs in consultation, significant angst amongst our community members, and significant uncertainty. I feel just so proud that this community and these centres have lifted to the challenge, have demonstrated the utmost professionalism and really demonstrated the disconnect, I think, between council and our community, who adore the work that these vibrant cultural institutions add to our area. The Greens quite early on committed to $5 million to protect and save these centres, because we truly believe that rather than fighting to protect existing community-run centres, we should be talking about building more and transitioning away from private-run centres, knowing the benefits of the community-run early learning opportunities. I think that if all of the information and the quotes and the work had been done earlier on, we might have seen more steadfast commitments from the state and federal government that could have also avoided the amount of emotional labour that's gone into this process. And I would urge councillors to listen to the community, to respect the submissions that have been made and to reverse this decision so that we can watch these centres continue to flourish and to grow into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call upon Nisha Doshi speaking to item 13.1. Just get you to state your name and your suburb would be great, and the 2 minutes starts when you do.
Yep, Nisha Doshi, St Kilda East.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. I'm an educator at Elwood Children's Centre and have been part of this beautiful community for the last 7 years, and I consider it as my second home. We provide continuous support to the community and work with the families to achieve the best learning outcomes for their children. After so much instability with the pandemic over the last 2.5 years, and then the uncertainty brought by the Council's proposal to sell our buildings, we deserve stability and future job security. Families and the children that attend our service deserve stability. Through the consultation process, Elwood Children's Centre, Eildon Road, and The Avenue have agreed on preferred options rather than to sell. These options would have the least impact on educators' families and the children and would allow us to maintain relationships and continue providing high-quality early childhood education and care. If Council decides to proceed with their proposal to sell the service, it will be a huge loss for our families, children, and the community, and the early childhood education sector. Families will be forced to make a tough decision to find a new service which will certainly have higher numbers and larger spaces. Smaller services like ours have value in the early childhood education space and offer a point of difference to larger, more modern services. We have had many families seek us out looking for an alternative after trying multiple larger services. I hope that Council's final decision is one that puts community at the forefront and allows us to continue providing quality of care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for coming this evening. I call upon Penny Brown, who's joined us online. Penny, can you hear us?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, and your 2 minutes starts when you do. Thank you so much.
Penny Brown, Elwood. My son graduated from Kinder last year, having spent 5 years at Elwood Children's Centre. My daughter currently attends 3-year-old Kinder and long daycare at ECC. I work full-time and have been living in Elwood for over 9 years. I've sat on the COM for 4 years. Put simply, I could not work full-time if I had not found the quality of childcare that ECC provides in a 2-minute walk from our home. In December, The Avenue, Eildon Road and Elwood Children's Centre were blindsided with the Council's sudden decision that the 3 centres must be sold, thus marking permanent closure of our community-run services. This decision was served without little warning and without consultation or thought to our children, families and educators. All of this while Christmas was approaching and COVID numbers rising. To say our centre hit its darkest days is an understatement. We were down, but not out. Never underestimate what a parent, carer and educator will do for their kids. What since has taken place in a coordinated effort between the 3 centres over 5 months is simply extraordinary. And perhaps, dare I say, underestimated. From committee meetings, focus groups, surveys of our community, online petitions, meetings with local and state MPs, hosting councillors at the centre, independent audits, analysing leases and legal documentation, letter dropping our neighbours, putting up not for sale placards, social media posts, information stalls at markets, fundraisers to pay for these expenses, consultation sessions with council, age articles, 7 News, a current affair. Parents, families, educators all volunteering their time to save our model of childcare and our centres. Councillors, This is your community calling. Do not sell. So it will come as no surprise how shocked we were to see that the City of Port Phillip spent $240,000
Thanks,
on
Penny. Just get you to come to the end if you could.
Yep, money that could have been spent across the 3 centres. Want women participating in the workforce, want to close the gender pay gap, choose to invest in your community, support our centres, support the women working there, support local childcare options. We should be doing everything in our power to keep our centres open and supporting the continuation of our centres of employment for women. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. I call upon Belinda Sasis, is it? Belinda, are you online?
Hi, that's me, Belsacious from Elwood. Good
Terrific.
evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Belsacious. I'm a mother at Elwood Children's Centre. It is evident with the outpouring of support from the local community that this centre is wanted, loved and much needed in Elwood. We are lucky to have such a strong community here who have worked tirelessly during this entire consultation process to try and save it. The consultation to sell 46 Tennyson Street was passed at council meeting based on inadequate and biased information presented to councillors. Councillors were told that there were no viable options to keep the centre operating and that it was in its best interest to sell it. They were told that the building was old, it was deteriorating, and any works done to it would trigger further works which would not be worth it. The cost would be extensive and the building was at the end of its life. They were told that no stone had been left unturned, and this was the basis of the motion being passed at the council meeting. And in my opinion, this should not have been passed in the first place. During this consultation process, we have now uncovered many viable options to keep the centre operating and alternatives to sale. Alternatives that have been judged by council officers as viable. We were told that the site would not be eligible for state government funding. Not only was this information incorrect, but we later discovered that the City of Port Phillip had not even contacted the relevant state government departments to discuss potential funding options before tabling their report to council. We discovered that the state government funding was in fact available to upgrade and redevelop centres through the Building Blocks program and the VSBA. We were told by council that the loss of 40 places in our area, 120 places across the 3 centres, wouldn't have any impact on our community as there was an oversupply of places in the area. We were told that local residents who use Elwood Children's Centre could easily go to the new St Kilda Centre, which could easily accommodate the extra places in time. Time being a lapse of 2 years with no significant plan in place for the loss of childcare placements in the meantime. The updated modelling which was commissioned by the council highlights the fact that even with the 3 childcare centres that you are proposing to sell, there would be still a shortage of childcare places in the next few years. What impact will this have on our community, on working mums and on single parents in the area? There is no price that you can put on the value to the community this centre offers. This centre helps bring families together. It's provided a haven and connection for families during COVID times. It is one of few local and not-for-profit community-run childcare centres which allows parents to have a say in how their children are taught. Closing this service would be devastating for family, staff, local community members and future families to come. Elwood Children's Centre provides exceptional personalised care for children. Extra attention and care is available for children with special needs and staff do an outstanding job in providing this extra level of care.
To the end, please.
We urge the City of Port Phillip councillors to vote against selling Elwood Children's Centre, the Avenue and Eildon Road childcare centres. Our centres are deeply valued by our community. Our centres sit at the heart of the local areas, creating strong connected and active local communities. Council's proposal to sell these 3...
If you could come to the end, please.
Council has a role to play in supporting children's services to be accessible to all children and families in the City of Port Phillip. It has a role to offer diverse childcare services like community and not-for-profit centres, not just privatised centres. Council has a responsibility to listen to what the community wants and needs and not be influenced by misinformation and financial...
Yep, thanks. I now call upon Dave Whitty speaking to item 13.1. Dave, can you hear us?
Certainly can. Dave Whitty, Elwood.
Welcome, Dave. Thanks. You've said your name and your suburb, and 2 minutes starts when you do. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you, councillors, for giving us this chance to talk. The service, we've got a daughter at Elwood Children's Centre, and the service really is wonderful. It's my parents came over from England. They were absolutely astounded by how great it was. I think to give an indication, we were actually at a private centre. We gave up that place to come to Elwood, knowing how great it was. Its reputation, and we do not regret that one bit. I think basically we're saying, council, you should be very proud of this facility. I know, I think we all know councils don't come in for praise all that often, but this is a wonderful facility. You should feel proud and not be considering closure. One of the big reasons that is so great is the staff, who are wonderful. Fantastic people and great at their job. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of them are actually from overseas, and the community that's built up around the centre is very important for them, and it's a really wonderful community. And it's, as Nisha said, it's like a second home. The building as well is also a wonderful location. You walk through those doors, it's very calming, lots of outdoor play areas, which is why we were pushing so hard for to retain that building. And I know the cost of the works to rehabilitate quite a lot, but we hear positive news about the funding, and we just ask that those options for funding are really explored to their fullest. It's a wonderful facility. And we're pleased that discussions are moving in the right direction away from closure, and that other alternatives are being explored. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I call upon Rebecca Sanders, speaking also to item 13.1. Rebecca.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Just get your name and your suburb, and your 2 minutes starts when you do. Thanks so much.
Rebecca, Elwood. My family is currently isolating with COVID, you can probably hear, and despite this, I've put aside rest to urge the council to dedicate funding to keep these centres in operation. I have nothing personally at stake if the council decides to sell these buildings. My daughter will be at school next year and we're not having any more children. But yet I feel so strongly about how important this is that we keep these centres in operation that I've invested countless hours trying to convince council officers and councillors of our very real concern over the past 6 months. It's been a huge investment in all of our lives in a really difficult time during a global pandemic. Here's an example of what would have been our reality if Elwood Children's Centre had been closed when we needed it. When my daughter was born, we lived in South Melbourne. We had extremely poor experiences at 2 private centres. Staff turnover was a huge problem and it greatly affected our child's confidence. She was reclusive and would cry in relief when we picked her up. We moved to Elwood in search of better environment. We tried one more private centre before finally getting an offer at Elwood Children's Centre. Within weeks, our daughter was back to her confident self. The centre is brilliant, with better ratios, amazing excursions that children get so excited for, amazing staff and a sense of community I've never experienced in the 3 other City of Port Phillip centres we had attended previously. Plus, children have important access to the earth in the yard, and the centres are not subject to St Kilda road noise and traffic pollution, which is so important for baby and toddler development, many studies have found. If Elwood Children's Centre wasn't an option, we would have needed to move out of the City of Port Phillip, once again moving away because of childcare. With 2 city-based careers, that would have meant that I would have had I wouldn't be able to continue my career. Getting home from a city job by 5:30 or 6 o'clock is impossible if living further than the City of Port Phillip boundary, and if both parents work full-time in CBD careers. My career had already taken a huge hit after job hunting based on maternity benefits, a difficult pregnancy, maternity leave, and 2 years of trying to solve our childcare issues had really taken my focus away from my career. This is exactly where the gender pay gap comes from. It was a real issue for me and would have been even worse if Elwood Children's Centre hadn't allowed us to settle in Elwood. I would have definitely not been working right now.
Thanks, Rebecca. To get you to come to the end, if you could, please.
Yeah, this is my conclusion. Young families uproot and move when they can't access the right childcare. We are proof of this. Residents are not forced to move because of outdated parks, club facilities, old foreshore facilities, or rundown toilets. This needs to be the top priority in the City of Port Phillip's budget. Nothing in your budget is more important for families in the area.
Thank you so much. I call upon Tara Winslow, who's in person. Tara, welcome. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, please. And your 2 minutes starts when you start.
Yep, Tara Winslow.
Hey, Tara.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillor. I'm the Director of Elwood Children's Centre, and I'm also a parent of a child that attends this Exceeding Kindergarten program at ECC. I believe my family and I are extremely lucky to be a part of ECC, a place that values the community, country and individual learning. ECC has been the foundation of learning for my daughter and has provided stability, lifelong connections, love, care and exceeding education outside her home environment during her early years. She is thriving in this unique early learning program, like many of the children enrolled at ECC. Although she isn't here tonight, she had some questions. Why does the boss of the country want to close us? Where will my friends go? What will my teachers do? And where will you work? My only response to her was, hopefully the boss, the mayor and the councillors, listen to the community, teachers and families and don't sell 46 Tennyson Street. I also hope the City of Port Phillip share the understanding and the values as the Victorian Government, which has invested $217 million into the budget to continue to ensure children across the state get the great start in life. I worry about the impact of the children's learning and wellbeing if 46 Tennyson Street was to be sold. I worry about the future children in the City of Port Phillip who won't have the opportunity to be given a unique, great start to life if 46 Tennyson Street was to be sold. I would like to share some feedback from one of our most recent tours. I told my husband about your centre last night and he was excited as I could hear. I was here to find a centre that was not a cookie cutter, but rather personalised with character and caring. This is because of the community Elwood Children's Centre creates. You can see the community in this room and some watching from home, with teachers, families and leadership team all working together to ensure that the children's early start to life is not impacted, however valued by the City of Port Phillip. Elwood Children's Centre's management shared our preference. Shared our preference.
Right. Finish, that'd be great.
Yep. Shared our preference in the consultation meeting. The options the officers and the councillors shared were possible. These options were preference that have the least impact on children, families and teachers in the community. If council decide to proceed with the proposal to sell 46 Street, Elwood, it would be a huge loss for the children, the community, the early childhood sector and a little girl named Ivy who's hopefully tucked away in bed.
Thanks, Tara. I now call upon Amy Smith. Hey, Amy.
Hello.
Welcome. Just get to state your name and your suburb.
Thanks. Amy Smith, Elwood. Evening, all. I'm the educational leader at Elwood Children's Centre, and as I'm sure you've heard this evening, the proposal that was made public last year has caused great angst within our community. So I'm speaking on behalf of the incredibly dedicated team that Council abandoned the intention to sell once and for all. This dark cloud that's been hanging over our heads regarding our job certainty at our beloved second home has become an incredibly exhausting burden to carry. Alongside providing education and care to young children across the City of Port Phillip, we educators have now been thrust into this political realm where we find ourselves having to constantly advocate for our right to continued operations in a sector that we know needs this service model that is small group sizes, community run, not-for-profit. This message cannot be clearer right now with the early childhood education sector receiving never-before-seen political and media prominence in the lead-up to the election this weekend. These promises acknowledge the essential service of education and care and the positive impact high-quality provision has on children. Our quaint, wholesome service model exceeds standards within the sector. Please don't sell. The community outcry has been incredibly evident. Community-run centres bring something unique and special to this community. Please don't sell. There's a myriad of alternative viable options opposing the sale and possible closure of ECC, and our team and families urge you to explore these. So the message is clear. Please don't sell.
Thank you so much. Kieran Wilcox, speaking to item 13.1, is next.
Good evening. Kieran Wilcox from Elwood. I'm a parent of a child at Elwood Children's Centre. I'm also a building designer, so I have seen from a couple of vantage points this issue, and I think you've made a few mistakes. in late last year, when you released your bogus and hole-ridden report, you showed your hand. Instead of approaching it as a business case with accurate inputs, we were dragged immediately into a debate around semantics of building compliance and processes, which, according to you, would be more or less insurmountable and prohibitive to any kind of works to continue these services going forward. Your report and everything which followed has been virtually a smokescreen. Over 5 months on, we still have no accurate numbers as to how much money is available. And we're still yet to hear how much money is needed. Yet all you ever say is that there's not enough. If you'd approached this properly a year ago, you'd know that what the services did, what they need, and how much you need to continue them. You haven't done this.
I've let you go a little.
Go on.
But you've used some words which I don't think are appropriate and don't reflect well upon the argument you're making. So I'd ask you to keep going, but be respectful to officers and council. Words like bogus shouldn't be used.
Right, I'll retract that single word.
Well, let's keep going. But just I'd ask you to be mindful, to be respectful to your argument and be respectful to councillors and council staff.
Go on, no problem, thank you. The modelling aside, which has been touched on earlier, you've pointed to the basic requirements of town planning and heritage as being major issues in terms of going forward with any kind of refurbishment or major works. I've spoken to your town planning department. They don't see these as major issues. If anyone has an issue with that, I would suggest walking down the hall and we can talk to them about it. Okay? These are simple issues which come up in almost every project. Okay? You've leaned on the mysterious requirements of the DDA. This is something which has really been quite frightening to a lot of people. It's mysterious, and there's a lot of requirements which are complicated. We've commissioned our own report, which has been briefed specific to the requirements of a childcare service. Unfortunately, the reports that we'd seen briefed and commissioned by council, they were really defect instruments, and they didn't support the process going forward.
Thanks, Kieran. Get you to come to the end, please.
I can. Throughout this consultation process, we've been really subject to some slightly condescending arguments coming back in the other direction. We want to work with you, and we would expect that you would be able to work with us.
All right. Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
All right. I call upon Roger Byrne speaking to item 13.1. Sorry, Councillor Sirikoff, I didn't see you there. Apologies. I'm not looking very well tonight, am I?
Thank you, Mayor. Am I able to ask the speaker?
Yeah, Kieran. If you're comfortable, would you
please?
be able to take the seat again? Councillor Sirikoff wishes to ask you a question.
Apologies.
Hi, Kieran. Hi. Welcome. I'm just wondering if, given your background in design, do you think it would be very useful if council did supply a guidelines or a set of standards that should be met to maybe address all these issues?
It would. It would. As I said, we want to work with council rather than against you. We've been chasing our tail with regard to the Have Your Say documents and everything else that have been put forward. So if there is a greater standard that council need to abide by, tell us. Give us that in black and white, and we will sit down and work with you when we get to that point. We understand that you're working through a business case, having gone back over the report that was issued last year, but we don't want to be your enemy in this because we have to all move forward as a community. So if we know what the requirements are, we can then help respond to them. That's pretty fair.
Thanks, Councillor Sirikoff. Anything further? No? Okay. Now, where was I? Roger Byrne, thank you for coming down. Speaking to item 13.1, obviously, Roger, and just get you to state your name and your suburb, and your 2 minutes starts when you do.
Roger Byrne, St Kilda West. Thank you for this opportunity. I wish to talk from a higher level, I think. I spent my life in asset management globally. I've written many guidelines. In fact, the main guidelines that the Victorian government are using was my work. And I'd like to sort of just build it around those sort of points. But I'm also a grandfather of children attending these centres. In recent years, I've been really impressed with where St Kilda was going, or That shows how old I am, where the City of Port Phillip were going with regard to policies. Your community engagement, transparency and asset management policies were a joy to read for someone like me. When one reads them, we believe that things are in hand and things are being done well. But suddenly I was faced, and through my daughter and the other centres, with the reality of how council is applying those principles. So I just want to touch on each of them. Community engagement. Reaching a decision behind closed doors and then telling the community what it is not community engagement. You consult and engage them before you start that process. As soon as you've got an issue, you must go out there and do that. Now, that's in all the guidelines globally on how to manage infrastructure decision-making. Transparency, the policy on transparency. In these instances, all information should be made available. I know these groups have asked you questions, many questions, of which we've had blank answers or taken a long while, and some that are still not answered. And that's not really good management, good policy, I should say. And from an asset management perspective, these decisions are heavily weighted on building management.
Thanks, Roger. Get you to come to Andrew.
Yeah, the council owns building stocks of $2.7 billion, and yet only the Town Hall and the South Melbourne Market have an asset management plan. Your policy says you're going to develop asset management plans. I can say any property owner in this area would be managing these assets far more effectively than what we are at the moment.
Thanks, Roger.
I'd like to see that. Thank you.
No, thank you. Laura Hill, welcome. Just get you to state your name again, if you could, Laura, and your suburb. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Laura Hill and I'm from Elwood. I'm the Vice President of the Avenue Children's Centre and Kindergarten, where my son and daughter attend. My son also attends Elwood Children's Centre. Every Port Phillip child deserves universally accessible, high quality and affordable early learning, regardless of their postcode or their family circumstances. Council knows this. It acknowledges it has a role to play in supporting services to be accessible to all children. It has a commitment to support a good cross-section of types, sizes and models of childcare centres within the municipality. Yet 167 days ago, Council unanimously voted in favour of a proposal to sell 3 highly valued community-run not-for-profit early childhood centres, effectively stripping the local area of more than 120 local kindergarten and childcare places and directly impacting over 200 children and their families. Council's proposal to sell the centres was rooted in the claim that there were no other options available. That wasn't true 167 days ago, and it isn't true now. In fact, through the consultation process, multiple viable alternatives to sale have been tabled and discussed with council officers. Council also claimed that the work to make the council buildings compliant with accessibility standards was too expensive and difficult, even when it has millions in funds available to use, which each of the centres have contributed to. Since then, Minister Stitt, with support from Minister Foley and Nina Taylor, has written to the council to confirm that Victorian government funding always was and is still available. And the Greens, through Steph Hodgins-May, have made a commitment of $5 million, and Josh Burns and Amanda Rishworth, if publicly announced that if elected, their government will work with council and the Victorian government and the centres to find a viable solution. At a time when the cost of living is rising, access to and the cost of early childhood services remain a major issue affecting Port Phillip families. Against this backdrop, it was shocking to read that the council has already spent $240,000 on this consultation process. If council had spent the same amount of money on the centres in recent years, I might not have needed to be sitting here tonight. 334 submissions were provided to council.
Thanks, Laura. To get you to come to the end, if you could.
Only 3 submissions were in favour. The rest were strongly opposed to it. Council cannot proceed with the sale of our centres when so many other viable options exist. Council needs to urgently end this farcical sale process so the dark cloud hanging over the centres, staff and families can be lifted. Our centres and families need certainty, and I'm finishing him. Certainty that centres will continue to operate and staff will have jobs. Certainty that families can enrol their children without the worry of future sale, and certainty that the valued model of community-run childcare services will remain in our community for the decades to come.
Thanks, Laura.
Allowing the 3 community-managed centres to thrive and survive will provide that certainty. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon Rashley. Thanks, Simon. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, for putting up with me again. It's been a few times.
No. Not putting up with it all, Simon. It's good to have you back.
Simon Rashley from St Kilda. So my wife and I, we found our way by accident into community-run childcare. We went on the council waiting list in 2017. At that time, the wait was very long. So after several months, a place came up at Eildon Road 1 day a week. It was less than what we needed, but the officer recommended get in, so we took it. And we're so lucky, by chance, we found ourselves in this system, and our experience has been excellent. Our 5-year-old has spent 4 years and is now thriving in prep, and our 2-year-old is there 4 days a week and is having a ball while being supported in his development every day. So I just have to say thank you to the staff. We could not be happier as parents. Unbelievable. He's off nappies at 2 and a little bit. No, great. It's beyond just education. It's amazing care. I've been on the Committee of Management for a number of years. I can tell you the service is well run, turning a profit, delivering affordable childcare and meeting the National Quality Framework. 35 years ago, the City of St Kilda determined an early learning service was needed in this area, and they purchased 17 Eildon Road for this purpose. For 33 years, an invaluable service has been run by a volunteer community organisation. While we cannot live in the past, we must acknowledge that achievement. We must not forget the reasons Council thought it was a good idea to have it there in the first place, and we cannot ignore the needs of the community now. Childcares and kindergartens are invaluable community assets, particularly to the neighbourhoods they serve, and you've certainly heard some great arguments from Caroline tonight about why there needs to be one in that area. And that's really, through this process, I didn't start that way, I just was defending my patch. Like, I'm on the committee, you're just going to get, of course, as officers have said, nobody wants their childcare to close. I didn't want my childcare to close, but I didn't know why. And really, through this process, what I've seen is that this little pocket of St Kilda needs a childcare. And that's why I think we need to find a way to make that happen. So, obviously, we're all interested in how do we make that happen. So there's two options, right? We could either stay in the
Simon,
building.
get you come to the end, please.
Yep, or we could find a new location. We tend to think it is viable to renovate the building. It might cost $2 million. We're not scared of that. And we think you should continue ownership. Give us a long commercial lease. Maybe you can ask me a question later on time if you like. But yeah, I'll wind up then. But basically, I think you should support a service that's going to last for decades.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Simon. Verena Eubner, please. No? Did they register tonight? Or... Okay, we'll come back. Simon James, welcome. Let's get you to state your name and suburb, Simon. That would be terrific.
Sure. Simon James, St Kilda West. Thank you, Mayor, councillors, council officers. I serve as Secretary on the Committee of Management for Eildon Road Childcare and Kindergarten, and I'm also an invested parent and citizen. It's now 6 months ago that we learned of the proposal to sell 3 council-owned properties and enter a short period of consultation. Since then, parents and our valued carers have suffered unnecessary uncertainty and stress, often fuelled by poor communication and conflict. $240,000 has been spent and countless hours invested by City of Port Phillip councillors, centre staff and the 3 volunteer committees of management. So we have to ask, what have we really achieved in that time? Your community has been forced to have their say and their voice is overwhelming. We want these centres operating for the good of the community, for your families, for your parents, for your businesses, for your children. We want Council to acknowledge the broader value these financially viable centres give to our community, and we want our Council to properly support and invest in retaining these centres. We've also proven there's viable alternatives that would ensure the continuation of these services. We've validated that keeping the centres open is required to meet future demand, keep cars off roads, give time back to time-poor families, and provide quality, affordable care and education with a mix of options. We've learned that in addition to the $6 million Council has already collected from these centres for maintaining fit-for-purpose properties, other levels of government are prepared to contribute and we are eligible for grants. For most stakeholders, this initial process has been unnecessary. Almost everything accomplished was already known or could have been achieved without this proposal. Consultation sessions have checked boxes, allowed for some Q&A, but fallen short of the authentic engagement that we really need to properly address these issues. Frustratingly, a vote to stop this sale process may still be months away. And then we expect that discussions informing how we move forward rely on funding agreements between City of Port Phillip, State Government, further proposals being prepared and further engagement periods. So,
thanks, Simon.
So much for not kicking this down the road. I can further talk to mistakes in the process, compelling submissions and the many viable alternatives, but all we really want to get to is how quickly can the City of Port Phillip councillors hear the voice of the community by voting against this damaging proposal, and with some clear air, work with the 3 committees of management to get on with resolving and funding the challenges.
Thank you. Call upon Zhao Mima Fa Fan. How do I do? Terribly. That's about 1 out of 5. Get you to state your name properly and then your suburb, please.
Hi. Samina Farfan. I'm from Elwood and mother at Elwood Children's Home. Our family recently moved to Melbourne in February this year, and we enrolled our daughter at Elwood Children's Home specifically for its community-driven approach and sense of warmth. It has been a wonderful experience, and the centre is so focused on family integration that we have been able to meet other like-minded parents who are now friends from picnics, working bees, etc., etc. We moved here with no family support, and so the centre has become our family and provided our daughter with stability, love and care. If the centre were to be taken away, it would take from our daughter a new home, which she has found in a new city. This move for her has been a big transition, and she has blossomed and prospered at Elwood Children's Home. I feel as a parent that giving children support and stability, especially in this current time in the world, means everything. We have also just resurfaced from a very long, lonely time. We have been disconnected from each other and from having a healthy community. These centres are at the heart of it all, because the community, at the heart of it all, because from community comes safety and a sense of belonging. These are the things I would like for my daughter and for all children to grow up with, and I hope we will always value these things and support the spaces that provide them. Thank you.
Terrific. Last but not least for item 13.1 is Mark Leslie. Welcome, Mark. Get to state your name and your suburb, and your 2 minutes starts when you do. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Mark Leslie, St Kilda. Tough act to follow tonight with the presidents and federal members and parents and staff and everything else. I'm just a partner in an accounting firm and treasurer of the Eildon Road Childcare and Kindergarten, which means, and I'm a parent there too, which means I get to talk to you about probably a secondary issue, but the viability and sustainability of this centre. And I think this is important for a couple of reasons. One is, despite the verbal assurances from members of the council that the financial drivers would be lower on the list versus the social and economic and educational outcomes, I still feel that these have been placed above all else. And the other part of this is also that some of the mistruths that were put out about the sustainability of these centres and their financial condition. As Treasurer, I'm very proud that our centre is sustainable and has delivered a surplus over the last number of years and is sitting on a very healthy balance of net equity balance on the balance sheet of $700,000 or thereabouts. This is while still providing care at well below average rates of $137 a day, paying the aforementioned $111,000 in maintenance levies a year, and also been hamstrung with the ability not to access certain funding streams because of the terms of our council-presided over lease and other factors. So, in short, we have a sustainable business model that continues to be viable. And so I think some more time spent understanding this before this process started may have seen us head in a bit of a different direction. And people have touched on the cost of this process, but I just can't help but think about all the hours that the volunteers and council officers and councils have put into this, what we could have achieved if we were putting this into something a bit more productive, something else in the city. So in deciding what happens next, I really want you to think about these facilities as strategic assets. These are...
Thanks, Mark.
I'm just finishing up. These are the type of property, once you let go, you don't buy back. These are the ones that you drive past and go, oh, my parents sold that for $50,000 30 years ago. Geez, that was silly. So think of the funding that goes to this as an investment, not a cost, and in the outcomes of the future of our children and the community. So thank you very much, and please keep community childcare alive in the City of Port Phillip.
Thanks, Mark. I'll go. Sorry, Councillor Sirikoff. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming here and presenting. I'm also wondering, asking the same question as Councillor Clark, given your background in financials, accounting, do you also see the centre as being viable as if it was gifted?
Yes. That is one of our preferred options that we've put forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Councillor Sirikoff. Now we've got more statements relating to item 13.1, which will be read out by a governance officer shortly. So I'm going to move around in terms of items because we've got one more person to speak. So I'm going to call upon Tim Norman speaking to item 14, which is the notice of motion, pedestrian access at Port Melbourne Secondary College. Tim Norman, do you hear us?
Yes, I do, Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Tim Norman, living in Port Melbourne for the last 22 years. I'm Secretary of the Beacon Cove Neighbourhood Association, which represents our roughly 500 resident members and another 2,500 followers in our wider community. And our committee has empowered me to speak in support of the upcoming council motion regarding transport safety around Port Melbourne Secondary College and surrounding streets. First on that, we recognise that roads nominated in this motion fall under the responsibility of the state government. However, that does not divest, in our view, the city of some accountability. You see, traffic in Fisherman's Bend is a problem for all of us in the city. The motion proposes that the city write to government ministers requesting 4 initiatives to specifically address dangerous issues around the PMSC. The BCNA endorses all these points, but we don't believe that is enough. You see, this motion draws attention to what we consider to be the canary in the coal mine. And the coal mine in question is Fisherman's Bend itself. And the canary happens in this case to be this area around the PMSC. It's giving us a warning. You see, there are already 7 high-rise developments either completed or nearing completion on roads that were designed for 2 to 3 story buildings. Conservative estimates put the number of new residents in those buildings into the thousands, meaning thousands of vehicles onto streets that were not designed for this. And to date, there has been 0, and I repeat 0, development of new roads or public transport with more high-rises started. The natural outcome of this is going to be congestion, danger, road rage, and accidents. So to city councillors, we endorse this particular motion, we fully support it, and we seek your leadership to ensure urgent action from relevant state agencies to prepare for the deluge that is coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. We've received further submissions to be read out on behalf of members of the public, which I refer to officers to read a summary, and thank you for doing this. Item 7.1, petition against BMX pump track in Garden City Reserve. Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, and a simple statement from Adrian Jackson to read, build the BMX track on Port Melbourne foreshore like the skate park is in St Kilda, and he suggests that Nicole Kidman could open it BMX Bandit style.
Thank you. Item 13.1, let's go to this one. Katie Wood, please. Let's go to that one first. Thank you.
Sure. Through you. The statement reads, as the second in charge of the Avenue Centre, I've been deeply distressed by the news that my job here has a time limit. The Avenue has an environment that no other centre could replace. We've created a home away from home for many children and families as they've returned to the workforce. In my 10-year career, I've seen the sector change over time and continue to evolve as more research proves the importance of early childhood education and care, not only for our children to develop essential skills, but to empower our community to return to the workforce. For me, working for a not-for-profit centre within the early childhood sector is incredibly empowering. I ask you now, what support will you give me? How will you ensure my future to gain new employment in an environment that holds the values I hold?
Thank you, rather. If you could read the statement out from Verona Hubner, please.
Certainly, through you, the statement in summary reads, we have trialled 2 different private childcare centres in the area. However, I found that none of them could give the personal care and nurturing of ECC. The educators are warm and friendly and provide more hands-on support than other centres can provide. Children can play in a garden and surrounded by trees, away from the noise and traffic pollution of main roads. In our short time at the centre, we have already forged connections with other families in the neighbourhood, given its community-based nature. The Council's consultation process has shown that there are now viable alternatives to selling the centre and forcing its closure. The loss of ECC would be devastating and distressing to the community and our family.
Sarah Roth.
Through you, the statement in summary reads, I am a ratepayer and the mum of a child who loves ERCK. ERCK is not an ordinary childcare centre for us. The culture of the centre and the highly qualified and caring staff enable me to pursue my career without guilt. Finding a 5-day spot in a similar centre in our area without a long wait time is basically impossible. As a working mum, I am concerned that the closure of the centres will cause another career disruption or setback for me. As a resident, I am worried that the closure of the centres will make St Kilda less attractive for young families and that the loss of families might intensify safety issues.
Jessie Belcher.
Through you, in summary, statement reads, we have lived in St Kilda for 10 years. Attending the Eildon Road Centre has led to us to make deeper connections within the community, and seeing the benefits for us and our kids was a pivotal factor in our decision to buy a house in St Kilda for the long term. Our kids have made friends at the local centre and we hope and expect they maintain these connections throughout their childhood and beyond. We ask that the Council opt for one of the several viable alternatives that have been put forward instead of imposing an unnecessary cost on families and eroding the community that the Council exists to serve.
Georgie Leslie.
I have lived in this wonderful neighbourhood for more than 12 years. We are blown away by the quality of care and education provided at ERCK. The centre provides a safe and encouraging space to learn and grow. This benefit extends far beyond the physical walls of the centre. We now know so many local families and feel more connected to the community we live in. The consultation process has shown there are many viable alternatives to sale, that there is no need to sell and force the closure of our centre. Alternative centres are more expensive and further away, making them more difficult to access and potentially cost prohibitive.
Lois Bell.
Through you, the submission reads in summary, the centres are community hubs and an essential piece of community infrastructure that must be available for the families in the area. There's not a person in the area that doesn't know a family that has used one or more of the proposed sell-off sites. Have you not thought about not only the families and children, but also the job losses that would result?
Surely you need some water. You okay?
No, I did it.
You're doing very well. Betty Stalwart.
Through you, it reads in summary, my wife and I have lived in the heart of St Kilda for 12 years. After doing some research, the immediate lack of other childcare facilities within a reasonable distance should be enough to stop the closure. Based on the hours, days our child is in care, we are on a potential 12 to 18-month waiting list, which leaves us with no options in that time. The councils claim that there are spots available within Port Phillip are not helpful when the closest spots are Port Melbourne, for example. Eildon Road is the only childcare or kinder within St Kilda Park Primary School's catchment. This has been an excellent school and vital part of the community, but by closing childcare around it is setting the school up to fail, as more people like us will be forced to look elsewhere for a more child-friendly council.
Lee Neil McCain.
Through you, in summary, it reads, I am an educator by profession and my family have lived in the St Kilda Elwood area since the 1930s. It is an imperative that councillors be aware of residents' desires. There have been numerous submissions by residents and others indicating their opposition to the sale of the 3 centres. Where are the submissions by residents extolling the sale? I have learned that the to-date cost of the consultation process has been $240,000. I feel that council should be reminded of the fact that this is public money. Why are the 3 children's centres subjected to the current consultation process not listed in the COP's listing of government-funded council-run childcare programs? It means that the centres cannot be found on the council website. This seems to be a major oversight. These centres should be reinstated in COP listing of government-funded council-run kinder programs.
Just the last one?
Through you, Mayor, there's one more from Helene Camoon, and the statement reads in summary, the way the consultation process was carried on was done in a hurry, with withholding documents until last minute and not thoroughly going through suggestions from the centre, which should be a major actor in the process if the intent was for the consultation to be meaningful. We stated in our submission to council our interest in the Jackson Street car park as an option to allow a future for ERCK. However, this was never mentioned in the subsequent council documents when listing potential options for the centre. We are left feeling the consultation has not been a genuine process, and I express my disappointment.
Thank you. That was brilliant. And we're done looking at the list. There's no left to go. All right. Yeah, I was going to suggest that actually. So, councillors, let's take a 7 or 8 minute break and come back at 8:30 if that's okay, and then we'll go straight into item number 5, which is councillor question time. Any questions of officers? Any questions? No, let's move now to item 6, which is the sealing schedule. Councillors, there's no items on tonight's agenda for sealing. So let's move to item number 7, which is petition and joint letters. Councillors, we have one petition tonight, which is item 7.1, which is a petition against the BMX pump track in Garden City Reserve. Do councillors have any questions of officers on this report, or petition response rather? Councillor Consolo, go ahead.
Thank you. Has or could a small section of the Sandridge foreshore be considered as a location for the pump track?
Tony Keenan.
Thank you for the question, councillor. I'd have to take that on notice, and we could investigate that. I imagine it may require coastal consent, which may be a barrier, but we can certainly investigate that.
Go ahead, Councillor Consolo.
And a follow-up to that, with tonight's petition response, if we voted up exactly as it's written, which I don't have it right in front of me right this second, do we have to mention something about looking at investigating that option?
Through you, Mayor, I think we would, because currently the recommendation is to go straight to Henry, sorry, I've forgotten his name, Henry Jackson, the Henry Jackson Reserve. So that's the way the resolution... Peter Jackson, sorry.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. We'll take some time. You want to take some time?
No, it's been suggested I have a conflict of interest on this, so I'll leave the room.
Sorry, what, you want to declare it? Okay. Right, let's just take a couple of minutes rest again. Just have a big stretch. Just a reminder, we're on item 7.1. We haven't moved or anything. We're still in questions. And Councillor Consolo, would you like to seek leave to say something? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Given my close proximity to Garden City Reserve, I will declare an interest, but I'm not sure if it's a conflict of interest. So out of an abundance of caution, I will remove myself from the room until I can seek further advice. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further questions on this item, councillors?
Councillor Consolato's declaring a conflict. Can I just declare an interest?
You can declare an interest. Go ahead.
Mayor, through you, it's been put to me by some of the petitioners that I taught at Port Melbourne Primary School and that some of the children who signed the original petition are ex-students of mine, and therefore I would have a conflict of interest because I had taught them. And given that's been put to me in writing, can I just let council know I've received that allegation? I don't believe it's a conflict that I taught these children 5 or 6 years ago, but I will acknowledge that I do have an interest because I do know some of the children who signed the original petition.
Thank you for declaring the interest. Just a reminder, if you could fill out the form and give that to the CEO after the meeting, that would be great. Councillors, anybody else wish to declare a conflict or anything else? No? Okay. Any further questions? All right. This is a petition response. I'm seeking a mover of the officer's recommendation and response. I've got Councillor Bond to move and Councillor Martin the second. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Wherever or whenever we end up building this BMX track, it better be a really, really good one, given the amount of times that we'll have come back and forth to these chambers. So I look forward to not necessarily having the first jump, but certainly watching the first jump from a distance.
Councillor Martin.
I spent 48 years, not 48 hours in education, and the last 20 years at one of the local primary schools. A huge issue for me in my teaching career was adolescent mental health. And when I first took the role as principal at Port Melbourne Primary School 21 years ago, one of the biggest issues we had there was engagement for our middle years. That's students aged from about 9 or 10 through to about age 13 or 14. And one of my jobs as principal was to try and engage with as much of the community as possible to try and find appropriate activities for those children. So the skate park at the Graham Street overpass, the school, I was quite heavily involved in promoting activities for that, in promoting that activity. I did work with groups like PCYC, Father Bob and all sorts of things to try and find ways of engaging those children in the middle years. 14% of kids in those middle years suffer from some sort of mental health issue in that time. And I believe if we as a council have a chance to help those children address those mental health issues, we can. In my personal life, I'm involved with a local football club where I've got over 250 children in that age group where I spend my volunteer time trying to address their needs. There are a number of other children in the Port Melbourne area who don't have access to things like football. They need something to keep themselves engaged. They need this BMX track. Quite happy with the officer's rec about where it goes. And can I just note that while I thank many of the petitioners for their reasoned arguments about why the current location was wrong. For example, there's a covenant over the area and things like that. I thank them for bringing that to our attention. There are other petitioners who are arguing that children don't seem to have any rights, that it's inappropriate that we should put any sort of adventure activities for children on any land in our municipality. And to those people, I've got to be careful what I say because I might find myself struck off the council register. I find it really disappointing that there are people out there who are thinking only of their own area and not of the children. And as I say, I do thank those petitioners who came up with positive suggestions for other places. And I thank the council officers for their work. And I look forward to getting this BMX track up and running as soon as possible so we can address the mental health of many of those young people who currently live in the Port Melbourne area.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. I'll say a few quick words, if that's okay. This formally now moves the council position effectively not to build the pump track at Garden City Reserve based on the further investigation of officers that there's covenants in place that would restrict the construction of that type of amenity at that location. So thank you dearly to the many, many residents that have contacted all the councillors over the past few months and the signatures to this petition. Council will now seek an alternative location for this, and as Councillor Bond said, we're very much looking forward to seeing that come back wholeheartedly. I'm very supportive of the BMX track being put in place at the appropriate location, and hopefully through this process we actually get an even better location because we know how wonderful and important these type of facilities can be, particularly to youth. And it's arguable that the skate park that was put in St Kilda, which is almost a jewel in the crown almost, led to some pretty amazing social outcomes, but also some outcomes such as a gold medal at the Olympics, etc., that played a small part in that also. So these small actions can lead to big things, and I'm still very, very committed to it, but let's see if we can find a even better location for this facility. Councillor Sirikoff, do you wish to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to also thank the residents for the petition and showing us how much they love their Garden City Reserve. I'd also like to thank Councillor Consolo and Councillor Martin for 2 hours of their time a few weeks ago, as they invited me to walk with them through 4 or 5 reserves in Port Melbourne as possible alternative BMX tracks. I want to say that Garden City Reserve is a beautiful green open space and already accommodates activities for the young and the old. The reserve is, as we all know, shared with dog owners and dog obedience school, and we need more dog obedience schools because of all the growing number of dogs out there loved by their owners. There's the Trugo Club, the Children's Playground, space for children to play sports team events in the area, and most importantly, it's a great open space for family and friends to get together and to enjoy functions and birthdays and any special event. So I'm glad that that the residents are being listened to, and also that we're also looking at an alternative location, Fred Jackson Reserve, and I hope that turns out to be a good choice for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sirikoff. Who else would like to speak to the item? Councillor Bond to close. Put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Consolo, welcome back. Councillors, let's now move through the presentation of reports, which is item 8 through 13. First report we have on the agenda this evening is item 8.1, the presentation of the CEO report, issue 85. Questions of the CEO and officers, councillors? Looking for a mover, Councillor Copsey and Councillor Clark to second. Go ahead, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Clark.
No.
Anybody else wish to speak to the item? Councillor Copsey wish to close? No, I'll put that. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Let's move to item 13.1, which is Childcare Centre Portfolio Improvement, consultation on proposal to sell 3 properties, reporting of submissions. Questions of officers, councillors? Councillor Crawford.
I was wondering, there were quite a few statements made or references to 240k spent on consultation and a few other things like that. So I was just wondering if officers could clarify some of the statements that were made in regards to that for me.
Chris Carroll.
And any others that, that I was not clear on. I can't think of the other ones. I'll come back to.
Through you, Mayor, I can see Anthony Savinkoff was looking
Anthony,
to
go ahead.
Make a comment. What I'll say before Anthony elaborates is that that's the full cost of all the investigations and everything we've done. While it was worded that way, aligned to the consultation in the report, it's actually much broader than that. And it's been part of our investigations of the options before we recommended things to you, post recommending things to you to consider. And some of that information will be, if you do determine eventually to retain some or all of the centres, will be used to inform the design and the plan and the build around that as well. In terms of the other broader statements, I guess rather than trying to respond to all of that tonight, we understand this is an emotional and that people have very strong opinions about it. What I would say is that we wouldn't agree that all of the things that were said tonight were factual or portrayed the way that officers have acted accurately, and I'm sure that some of the councillors who've been part of those conversations and have seen the work that we've done would recognise that, so I don't think we need to go any further than that.
Thanks, Chris Carroll. Just waiting for further questions if there are any. Councillor Sirikoff, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
In the upcoming report, in the report being provided to Council in the near future, will it be able to provide a cost-benefit analysis on the 3 individual childcare centres in the different scenarios of if it was gifted or if it was leased to own, and taking into such costs as ongoing maintenance, council liabilities, council staff overheads, childcare, wage, salary, subsidies through the levies, and also the levies themselves.
Chris Carroll, do you want some more clarification? You okay?
Through you, Mayor, I'll reflect. So to the extent that I can answer that question tonight, I will. I probably need to reflect on exactly what was asked and provide it outside of the more detail outside the session. We are analysing the options in accordance with the criteria that the council agreed to, and that does include a range of mainly non-financial considerations, but it does include some financial considerations, and officers will obviously make a recommendation based on our perceived overall value for money assessment. So I think we're at least partially addressing what you've asked, but in terms of the specifics, I'll have to take it on notice and reflect on your question a bit further.
Appreciate you doing that, Chris Carroll. Thank you. Councillor Crawford, do you have a question? No. Go ahead.
I haven't had a look. There was a mention of some plans put up on the Have Your Say website. I was just wondering if you could, what were they plans for, and is it just part of that kind of early analysis?
Anthony, go ahead. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. The plans that were uploaded to the Have Your Say document library today were plans that provide a feel of what work would need to be done to the centre if we were to develop it quite modestly. So keep the existing building, keep it at single level, upgrade it, but keep it modest. The plans are architectural plans. They're just to give a general sense of that, and they were prepared directly in response to the request from the centre given that we'd prepared a bigger scheme for a smaller scheme, so that's what the plan showed.
Thanks, Anthony. Tony Keenan.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Just further to that, I think one of the confusions that we've had with the consultations with the centres is that council at the moment is, I guess, looking at, for want of a better word, proof of concept, not a detailed architectural costings. And so council is at a point where you're wanting enough information to make a decision around what to proceed with. And some of the confusion is about the sort of procedures or processes that would be entered into once you'd made that decision. You had detailed architectural drawings, and we're not at this stage. This is a process where we're doing enough to provide council with, I guess, broad proof of concepts and to give you enough information around what to do next. And then, depending on what council elects to do, at some stage, if there is a decision to do further work on the centre, you would then need to go to that stage.
Thanks, Tony Keenan. Go ahead, Councillor Crawford.
Just a follow-up, please. So can I clarify, if we were to vote to rebuild, upgrade or whatever the facilities, then we would work with the centres to find out what they need in terms of what their vision is, as well as before we did any detailed architectural plans. Would that be the case?
Through you, Mayor, and one of my property colleagues might like to add to this, but normal process would be that council would approve a concept, direct officers to go off and do further work, and including consultation, and then bring that back for the next stage of a decision. But Mr. Savinkov might be able to add more to that.
Anthony, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, if we were to proceed with developing detailed architectural plans, then the input of the centres as user of the site, or at least current user of the site, would be very valuable to that process.
And through you, Mayor, sought.
Chris Carroll.
And through you, Mayor, it would be sought. In addition to being valuable, we would actually go and seek it.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Anthony. Okay. Councillors, I'm looking for a mover to this or something else. Councillor Bond to move. Councillor Martin to second. Councillor Bond, do you wish to speak to the item?
I know they've all left, bar Teresa, but just like to thank the submitters that came along this evening. We are listening. We have heard your feedback, and we are looking at all options for these centres. As most people would know, we are in negotiations with the state and in discussions with the state government, and we're very limited in what we can say about those, but we hope for a really good outcome with those, and we hope to be able to clarify the future of these centres post those discussions. So I know we're all a little bit tongue-tied on what we can say here tonight, so just let you know we are listening. We have heard your submissions, and we have heard your passion that was on display earlier tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Councillor Martin.
I listened to the passionate petitioners and submitters tonight. I feel for them. Many of you know my own background. I've got 12 years of involvement in managing childcare centres, 3 different ones, currently on the board at Bubup Womenjeka. Passionate believer in community-run childcare centres, and passionate believer that, if possible, we should try and maintain our existing 3 centres if we can. If they can't, I heard our passionate petitioners say, don't sell our centres. It may not be possible. We may be able to keep their centres, but it may not be possible to maintain them in their existing facilities. So much as it would have been lovely to say, look, we'll pass a motion tonight saying we won't sell your centres, there's no way that we can do that, because if we put that up as a suggestion and then we found out that it was impossible to repair one of the existing centres, we'd have to go against our word. So we much as I would have loved us to do that, we're guaranteeing to look at all their submissions. I certainly hope that we'll be able to find a way of keeping those 3 centres in their existing communities, whether it's in their existing facilities or we're in other facilities, and certainly I personally would try to move heaven and earth to see if we can come to that outcome. But unfortunately, we can't give them what they want tonight, because we need to go through this process. We need to see what the best outcome is, and the best outcome may not be to sell 3 centres. The best outcome may be to keep all 3 centres and rebuild them. It may be to build a new centre somewhere and sell one. Who knows what's going to happen? But I know that the 9 people sitting around this table have been listening very, very carefully to all of our community. They know that we know what our community want, and we'll do our best to deliver it within the means at our disposal. And let's hope that our colleagues at a federal and state level will go through with the offers of support that we've had, and let's hope that the money's on the table to help us.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Deputy Mayor Baxter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to echo thanking the everybody who's submitted and been part of this consultation process. I totally acknowledge the frustration of people who feel that this has gone on for a very long time, and that that quite a lot has been spent on it and all of that sort of stuff. I do get that. I think in this case we are attempting to do something right, as much as people will tell us we're doing it wrong, and that can take time and that can take investment. I do want to just reassure people and point back to the motion that was passed the last time we considered this, which was to look at the best options for the best outcomes for kids in the community. And utilising those criteria that we specifically spelled out, including things like making sure that there was no, overall loss of places in the area, and making sure that we get, partner funding and those important things. We are continuing to abide by those principles, and this process is getting us there.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Baxter. Who else would like to speak to the item? Okay. Councillor Crawford, go ahead.
I'm going to be very brief because I often say too much. I just wanted to really thank everyone for coming to speak tonight, for your efforts and your eloquence. It definitely has been heard. And obviously, we wish it was sooner, but we will be coming to that next decision around options as soon as we can to try and give you certainty. And obviously, most people know my position on this, but I look forward to that next stage. So at least there is a clear decision that then perhaps everyone can breathe a little easier.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. It's been a big process, a painful process. I'm incredibly impressed and acknowledge the ridiculous amount of work that the committees of management, the volunteers that they are, the childcare staff and our council officers have put in this, and there's still so much to go. Again, in hindsight, maybe we should have purchased it differently, but it's necessary to address the future of these buildings. We can't just keep kicking it down the road. And I want to get to a long-term solution that's right for our local families. It was said in some of the speeches that what we started, the argument that was started, what was statements, they've evolved. That's part of the funding and things we're still working through. And but the funding available is not without cost to the City of Port Phillip. There's always going to be part of it that we need to keep working through. And I think that there's definitely weight in the demographic change that could happen should these centres close. So there's still much to do, but committed to finding a good long-term solution for this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else wish to speak to the item? Councillor Copsey, go ahead.
I won't repeat what's been said, though I echo those sentiments. I also just wanted to add thanks to our officers who I believe have been diligent and acted in good faith at all times to conduct this process, which is a difficult one, in a way that's transparent and provide as much information in as timely a fashion as we are able to possibly to all participants. Thank you to the submitters for the effort that's gone into the consultation. I'm pleased that we've had such a, I am honestly pleased that we've had such a good engagement in this process. That's what my hope was when it was commenced as a consultation. And I look forward to the next steps of this as well.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Bond, do you wish to close? Okay. Put that motion to all councillors. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Let's now move to item 13.2, which is councillor expenses monthly reporting. It's December to March this time. Questions? I'm happy to move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Copsey, thank you for moving. Seconding, rather. Anybody wish to, I don't wish to speak. Councillor Copsey, you wish to speak? No. Okay, let's put that to you. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 13.3 is the Integrated Security Services Contract Extension. There's an alt recommendation which is on the screen or about to be put on the screen for you councillors to consider. Whilst we wait for that to come up, can I ask if there's any questions on this item? Yeah, go for it. If you put the alt rec on the screen, that would be great. Just the red text that's coming. If you just give us some background to that CEO. That
through you, Mayor, we're just removing the words exclusive and of GST and putting the words inclusive of GST. So it's a minor amendment, but I think an important one.
That's okay. 13.3. There we go. All right. No questions, councillors. I'm looking for a mover of the officer's recommendation. Councillor Copsey and Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Copsey, do you wish to speak to the item? Councillor Sirikoff. Anybody else wish to speak? You have a. You can speak if you wish to. Would you like to ask a clarifying question? Just ask a clarifying question, councillor. Turn your microphone on, please.
I have a clarifying question, please, Mayor. When we have costings of, say, $1.2 million, inclusive of GST, does council get the GST back?
It's difficult to allow as a clarifying question, but I'll allow it anyway. Let's go, Peter.
Yes, through you, Mayor. It's a GST. We paid GST and we can't claim it back from ATL. Similarly, when we do get income from GST, you have to remit it to ATL. So its net cost to us is zero for the GST.
Great. Councillor Zirikov, do you wish to speak to the item?
No.
No. Anybody else wish to speak to the item? No. Councillor Copsey doesn't wish to close. I'll put that motion to you. All those in favour, councillors? That's carried unanimously. Let's now move to item 13.4, financial update, third quarter 2021-2022 financial review. Questions from you, councillors, please. There being none, councillors, you have an officer's recommendation. I'm looking for a mover of that or something else. Councillor Martin to move, Councillor Crawford to second. Councillor Martin.
It's always a fascinating document. My two favourite documents here are the CEO's report and the quarterly financial review. I see Mr. Liu over there. Thank you so much for putting this forward. I think I've got my head around it, and it would appear that once we weighed everything in the balance, our current position is actually a little better than we would have forecast at the very start of the financial year. However, there are lots and lots of black clouds on the horizon. So, yes, it's good news to see that we're tracking reasonably well. But with inflation running at 5.1% and things like that, let's hope that future quarterly financial reviews show our position as well as the one that we've got at the moment. I have a horrible feeling they won't.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Crawford.
So I like these updates because obviously so much changes. We set a budget and then always other things come at us during a year. There are so many changes. So these quarterly updates are particularly helpful for us as councillors, but also for our community to see the changes, especially in the current environment. I do note, although we have a better cash surplus at the end, it comes on the back of many project deferrals or vacancy positions that we have not been able to fill. There is a very tight job market, and the lack of the ability to retain really good staff is difficult, and we know that our community wants efficient services, and it does make it more difficult because our officers are working very, very hard, overworked perhaps you could say, in some regards, because the job market is so tight. So although it might sound good on a superficial level, really, the reason for it is problematic. It will be challenging in the future because we still need to do those projects and we still need to provide good services for our community, and we still need to fulfil those vacancies. So it's an interesting document. It is very reflective, I think, of many organisations going through this at this time. But when community may read it, perhaps read it in the idea that this is perhaps spending that has been move forward to another year, not just done this year. It's projects not yet realised.
Who else would like to speak to the item? Councillor Martin, do you wish to close? Councillors, I'll put that motion to you. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Let's now move to item 13.5, which is the status of council decision and questions taken on notice, recorded by Council 1 January 2022 to 31 March 2022. Questions of officers about this report, councillors? There being none, there's an officer's recommendation or something else you'd like to move. The officer's recommendation, Councillor Copsey and Councillor Crawford to second. Thank you. Councillor Copsey, do you wish to speak? Councillor Crawford, no. Anybody else wish to speak to the item? I'll put that motion to you, councillors. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Final report under this section is item 13.6, which is motions for the MAV State Council meeting. Questions of officers, councillors? There's none. I'm looking for a mover of the officer's recommendation or something else. Yep, you wish to move it. Councillor Crawford wishes to move an alt motion, and just get you to put that alt motion first. Councillor Crawford will ask for a seconder.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find my wording. Oh, so that's not my alt motion. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
There you go,
Mayor,
Councillor
can I just,
Crawford.
quick point of order.
Yeah, go for it.
I just want to make sure, did this need to come in as item of urgent business before we can consider it? Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So my adjustments is that MAV, 3.1.1, that MAV advocate to state government to invest additional resources for the maintenance of state government transport assets, including VicTrack, Yarra Tram and other Department of Transport DOT assets.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Crawford. I'm looking for a seconder. I'll second it. Councillor Crawford.
So council is often receives complaints or concerns about graffiti, grass not being mowed, things not being maintained, rubbish along areas that actually happens on assets that are not ours. Previously, we did have an agreement with Department of Transport for some of the nature strips to be maintained, but that MOU no longer exists given the discrepancy in the amount of funding we got for it to the actual cost to council. So this is particularly the first one is about advocating to the state government that in their various budgets for the various organisations, they need to have a maintenance budget because it happens in councils across the city. We can't maintain their assets and yet we receive many of the complaints around them and it does affect our community. So it's about including that in the ongoing budgets for these organisations. And the second part to the motion is that one of the challenges in a very dense city is when we need the new schools, which obviously we want for our community, they are often built in the limited space with no private open space for themselves to use, and we'll share that of councils' assets, which are already highly utilised, and it is challenging. So we are advocating, asking MAV to advocate state government to make sure there is adequate space for these new schools, or there is an appropriate arrangement with the council and these government schools for use of council open space.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. As seconder, I wholeheartedly support the alt motion that Councillor Crawford's put up there, and look forward to the councillors hopefully putting this forward at the State Council, whoever it will be, our representative, which I assume will be Deputy Mayor Baxter, and perhaps a couple of other councillors there also to canvass the room for you also. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak to the item? Councillor Copsey, go ahead.
Thank you. I thank Councillor Crawford for the initiative around the asset maintenance, which is something we frequently hear from residents about, and it's a source of frustration additionally because residents don't want to have to shop around between managers of public land to get a resolution. So it really... I hope that we'll see success from this advocacy motion and see adequate funding and undertaking maintenance of the asset owners. And in relation to 3.1.2, I certainly just wanted to speak to that briefly to say, you know, as someone who's seen this issue come up frequently during the term on council, my strong preference would be that we see the state government actually plan for provision of open space rather than encroachment on council open space or existing open space that's there for the public. It's a really challenging issue in a dense inner city municipality like ours. I have no doubt that we'll find other councils are in a similar position and would hope that we'll see provision of open space. Just a couple of examples that have come up recently. Of course, we all remember the issues that have arisen around the shared use of Gasworks Park by a local college in Lakewood, and Councillor Pearl and I also recently visited with Albert Park Primary, and I have no doubt that my fellow Lake Ward councillors would have been there had work and illness not prevented their attendance. But, you know, there is a school. These are long-running issues. They don't just arise in relation to the vertical schools that we're seeing more frequently advocated for. And so I really do think that we need to, particularly with what's on the horizon with Fisherman's Bend, and we've had tonight further discussion around the precious public space that we have. We do need to be planning to increase that. It's something that's envisaged in the Fisherman's Bend vision, and I would like to see that the state government is seriously considering investment in that. Council has made a commitment to increasing public open space over the 10 years and funded that, and we would like to see that sort of commitment met by both state and federal governments in ensuring that our community has access to adequate open space going forward, especially kids.
Thanks for that, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Big thank you to Deputy Mayor Baxter for bringing this to Councillor's attention, and thank you to Councillor Crawford for improving even further the original motion. If I can put my former school principal hat on, I've been involved in a number of discussions in the last 10 years. Port Phillip has been the pilot area for the state government using council land for private use, or for school use, and expecting council to maintain it. And let's hope that the MAV will help ensure that not only does this not happen any further, and perhaps we might even, Councillor Baxter, when you're talking to people at MAV, find if we can get a little bit more support so that when council's trying to maintain Murphy Reserve, Gasworks Park, the Pocket Park outside Albert Park Primary School and so on, we can get some additional funding from the state government because it's their school children who are using our land. And also, it'll be wonderful. People will stop ringing me about verges that are owned by, that are Department of Transport grass verges and median strips and so on. And people expect us to do something about it without the government funding us appropriately. Let's hope they get on the case. Good luck, Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Crawford, wish we close? No? Okay, let's put that motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's move to item 14 now, which is notice of motions. Councillors, we have one notice of motion, which is item 14.1, a motion that I have raised in relation to pedestrian access to Port Melbourne Secondary College and Murphy's Reserve. Do councillors have any questions of the officers or me? No? I'll put the motion. It's on the agenda, so I don't need to read it out to you. I'm looking for a seconder of the motion, if that's possible. Councillor Martin, thank you for seconding it. I'll speak to the item quickly, but I'll reserve at the end. This motion goes to the heart of what a number of people in our community and some of the most vulnerable people in some respects in our community are asking us to look at in the Port Melbourne end. A wonderful piece of infrastructure has been constructed by the state government in the Port Melbourne Secondary College, and it's been attended by a number of Year 7 students at the moment. As those children get to school, a lot of them come by active transport in terms of walking from Port Melbourne or other areas, such as South Bank, or riding their bicycles across a number of roads adjacent to the school. Road safety has been brought up as a concern by the school principal to me, and also a number of people on the Parents Association and the children themselves. The Gateway Ward councillors have received a number of approaches of feedback based on concerns around safety, and the Gateway Ward councillors have worked constructively with Port Phillip officers about this issue, have also been working collaboratively with the state government, Department of Transport, and also the Department of Education through the construction of the Port Melbourne Secondary College. What this motion asks for is an initial formal attempt at advocacy on behalf of those students and their parents and the school itself to get some action and work collaboratively with state government authorities around changes, particularly to the phasing of signals on Williamstown Road and Graham Street to improve pedestrian safety. Funding for school, potentially a school crossing supervisor at the intersection of Williamstown Road and Graham Street. The potential construction of new pedestrian crossings and bike signals on Beacon Road and Williamstown Road, and the construction of a raised Wombat crossing in the slip lane potentially on Graham Street and Plummer Street intersections. These improvements will make a huge safety improvement to the area, and it's something I think council should formally be advocating for. For clarity, obviously these 3 roads adjacent to the school are State Government Department of Transport roads. That doesn't mean we advocate our safety responsibility as a council, quite the contrary. This motion sets in train a framework to ensure that we're meeting our obligations and advocating for our community. On that basis, I seek your support for this motion, councillors. Peter Martin, Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to the item?
This is a huge issue for the citizens of the Port Melbourne area. Councillor Consolo, Mayor Pearl and I attended Ride to School Day at the primary school, and we were hoping to talk about bicycles, and we were bailed up by every member of the school council with safety concerns about children's access to and from the school. And Mayor Pearl, thank you so much for putting this together, because this is pretty much what the members of the school community were asking us to do. I can also tell you that all of the various local sporting clubs that use Murphy Reserve are also totally in support of this. Very careful. We're very keen to make sure that children get appropriate access, not just to the school, but to the sports fields in that area. And one of the speakers in public question time, Mr. Norman from the BCNO, spoke about how the Beacon Cove Neighbourhood Association is also supporting this. And he, as Mayor Pearl has just done, alerted us to what's going to be happening in that area as more and more residential towers are built, and traffic management is going to be an ongoing issue. But this is a great start, so I commend it to you.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. There's lots of movements around this area, including the school's new neighbour of a popular shopping centre. The reserve, Murphy Reserve, has always had a lot of sport use, and so many people are trying to get to the sports fields. You'll see lots of people crossing all the ways to get there. There's also was a big increase of people trying to get to this area when the playground was renewed. You'll see so many people just making illegal crossings because there's no other opportunity. And of course now there's the school and trying to get kids safely across there every single day for school and home back safely. And of course there'll be further growth of the Fisherman's Bend area. This area needs some more safety around it, and the school's a perfect opportunity to look at addressing it in some heightened movement times and provide more opportunities around here to make sure that people can access this area safely. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Anybody else wish to speak to the item? I'll quickly close. It might have my name on it as the mover of the notice of motion, but it's really a gateway ward motion. So I thank my colleagues, Councillor Consolo and Councillor Martin, for helping me advocate putting this together. I've now put that motion to you, councillors. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's move to item 15, which is reports by councillor delegates. Councillors, over to you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Last Thursday, I went on a tour of a number of the Housing First properties, not just in Port Phillip but elsewhere, and it was very illuminating to see some of the work that Housing First has done. I think it would be amazing if we as councillors had an opportunity to look at not just the Housing First properties in our municipality, but perhaps those run by the other community housing organisations, so that we're totally up to speed with what's happening in the area. So great experience for me, and it would be wonderful if some of my colleagues could join me on a similar tour further down the track.
Thank you for the update, and thanks for your commitment to that also, Councillor Martin. Councillor Copsey, go ahead.
Just like to acknowledge that yesterday was Ida Hobbit Day, and the LGBT Advisory Committee helped ensure that we had a great community flag raising event for the rainbow flag going up on the community flagpole. I was unfortunately unable to attend due to work commitments, but I know that we were well represented and that our community is fully behind this day, celebrating the diversity of our community and our commitment against all forms of discrimination.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. That's a very important thing to acknowledge, and thank you to the councillors that supported that event yesterday. Councillor Crawford, go ahead.
I just wanted to let the community know that our Linden CEO, Director Melinda Martin, who has been guiding Linden New Art for the last decade in the City of Port Phillip, will be moving on, unfortunately for us, but excitedly for the City of Shepparton, to run their new art centre. And I just wanted to pay tribute to her exceptional work over the last decade for the city. Lyndon has gone from strength to strength under her lead and her guidance and a strong board, and they have recently announced a new Juncture Prize, which is another prize for artists at mid-career, and the leverage they take from that building and the deed funding that we give them is incredible, and the reputation that they bring to this city as an arts hub and a leader in all different arts forms, particularly the visual, is can't be measured. So I just wanted to pay tribute to Melinda and her fine work, and we'll be sad to see you leave, but thank you for what you have done for the City of Port Phillip.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Very well said. Any other reports, councillors? Thank you for those 3 reports. Let's now move to item 16, which is items of urgent business. We have 2 confidential items of urgent business on tonight's agenda, councillors. These items are confidential council business, and they relate to, obviously, confidential council information, being information that would prejudice council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. Therefore, it would be considered. These 2 items will be considered in the confidential section of our agenda tonight. Councillors, do you have any further items of urgent business to be considered this evening? There being none, let's now move to item 17, which is confidential matters. Councillors, we have 1 confidential report on the agenda this evening, and obviously the 2 items of urgent business that will be, sorry, pardon me, just wait for it. We'll go on the confidential, then declare it. Sorry, pardon me. And then obviously the 2 other items of urgent business also. So items 17.1, 17.2, 17.3. I'll now close the meeting. No, I need to take a move for confidential governance. So now look for a mover to move in the confidential, which is Councillor Bond, and a seconder, which is Councillor Sirikoff. All those in favour to move in the confidential? Great, thank you. Most of that is passed. Just whilst I'm here, did I need to move the the urgent items? No, we do it when we're in. Okay. See you, Teresa. I now call upon a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I just moved the confidential item. No, I didn't. I didn't close the meeting. I did not close the meeting. You go look at the replay. I said I moved the items of confidential to be considered. I didn't close the meeting. I'm the chair. I can do what I like. No, it's not. I now move that the meeting be closed to members of the public to consider the items. All those in favour? It's carried. Close the doors, please.